Do we have any non-public that you know of today?
No problem. Okay, being 7:01, I'm gonna call this meeting of the Dunbarton Board of Selectmen to order. See all three selectmen present, the town administrator, the recording secretary. And it's also being taped by our infamous Leo Martel, who's back from Canada. Welcome back, sir. And we are on, sir. We're live.
Yes, you are.
Okay, we'll start off with the old business. And the minutes of the last meeting.
Dates right on it even.
Thank you for noticing that. And you can take in sarcasm.
I knew Leo was back and you were gonna fix that stuff.
Okay, the regular minutes, do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to accept them as written and amended.
Do I have a second one?
Yeah, I'll give you a second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the minutes?
All right, you accept it and amended, they were amended.
Just with the typos that from what you turned out. And you should have got a copy via Lean acceptance.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, all in favor of the minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, please sign, sir, and pass it that way. Okay, we have a second set of minutes for the non-public session.
I didn't put it on there.
Oh, okay.
But they do exist.
Yep. It's for a non-public session on Thursday, September 21st, 8:35. Do I have a motion on that one to accept these?
I'll make a motion to accept those minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll give you a second.
Okay, discussion, I just wanna say,
That's the non-public?
yes,
Okay.
I thought those were, I read the minutes, you, well written, thank
That's
you.
okay, just like that?
It was perfect. You did a good job, thank you.
All right, can I get the,
We have to do a vote, all in favor of accepting the non-public session minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I was writing something down.
It was Dave made the
Dave.
motion, Bob second, and all were in favor of accepting the minutes as written. And these will be sealed as soon as they're signed. Almost, sir, we have a few more minutes.
Oh,
You wanna take your jacket off, it's a little warm, you all get it, all set?
No, I'm all set, thank you though.
We get, last one, the windows preserved.
Here you go.
I'll sign this first. And you put it in here. And it's gotta come back where we gotta sign it.
should give it self-sealing ones.
I know, hey, it costs money. You want the taxes to go up?
The amount is probably not that much.
I know there's, for 500, it's about, $150 for the envelopes. Town clerk.
I don't know what I have, I buy boxes of it, I don't pay that much.
We buy a
Okay.
case.
I'm gonna open up to public comment first, before we start. I'm gonna start with Leo, welcome back.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, two quick things. One is I want to thank the guys who took over for me while I was gone,
So acknowledged.
and especially Linda Nickerson, because she's the one who uploads these for me every week,
Okay.
and she had to deal with new players here, so it made it a little more difficult for her.
Just, one of the persons you selected was Mert,
Yeah,
made a comment about 2 sessions back, and actually, gained some more revenue for the town by his suggestion.
yeah, I saw that.
That was well deserved.
Well, is that what you expect from me now?
Exactly, I went, in fact, since he was only a trainee, you should be,
I'm quitting. All right, and one other thing I wanted to note is, I noticed last week you didn't have a public comment at the end of the meetings. Is that done with now, or?
there was, I think, there was no,
There was
there
anybody
was
in the
any,
crowd?
Okay, we
there
asked, yeah.
There was no one here?
except Mert.
Well, we went into non-public, and then, we came back out, I don't think there was anybody there.
Yeah, but as we adjourned, Mert was the only one here.
Okay, I just didn't hear anybody ask if,
Yeah,
you know,
well,
so, okay,
yeah,
that's,
so noted.
There was no recording when I came back to the
Okay.
minutes.
We haven't stopped it though, to answer
Okay.
your
No,
question.
just
absolutely not.
curious, all right.
Okay, Woody?
Just one thing, appreciate getting the sign done for hazardous waste day, but it has the wrong date on it.
Oh, no!
Okay,
Okay, we'll be corrected immediately tomorrow.
I just saw it tonight when I was driving up, so.
Okay. Who puts that out?
we have a volunteer that does
Okay.
that, so I'll make sure she gets the right date.
Yep. Thank you, Woody. I came down to see you this week and I missed you, but we will link up again,
And then when we were there,
Wednesday afternoon.
must have been when I was at the doctor's.
That's correct. We will link up though. Chief, how you doing? Welcome.
Good.
Anything for the public good? Okay, I'm gonna close the public comment at this point, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Patrick Monahan, he's our accountant, auditors rather.
Yes.
Correct? And you have, we basically are our receipt of your reports, basically the year-end annual statement and your management letter. The floor is yours, sir.
All right, well, thank you very much for inviting me in this evening to go over these two reports primarily. The theme on the financial statements is gonna be good. The management letter, we have some old stuff that we need to go over, and then there's a couple new comments. The way I typically go through this is, I'm gonna cover the highlights in the financial statements, and at any point in time, if you have questions, prefer just to go over them, at that point. So, any question's a good question.
Okay,
With that being said, again, my name is Patrick Mohan. I'm a manager with Melanson Heath and Company. My function on the audit was to oversee the field work, review the work papers, review the financial statements, and make sure the job went well, which I believe it did. With that being said, we can turn past the table of contents to the independent auditor's report, which is essentially page 1, which outlines the management's responsibilities and the auditor's responsibilities for this report. Our responsibility was to assist in the compiling of the town's information and then form an opinion on those financial statements. In our opinion, these financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. There is no modifications, and it's considered a clean opinion and is consecutive with other years as far as the town being in compliance with all the accounting principles. On pages 3 through 9, it's management's discussion and analysis. It's really a summary of the numbers that we're gonna go through. So if we can turn to page 10, please. Page 10 is the statement of net position. And what this is a balance sheet that's presented on the accrual basis, and it reports out your long-term assets and your long-term liabilities. It is comprised of your general fund, your special revenue, capital reserve funds, permanent trust funds, all in one column, and then accrual adjustments are performed on them to record, as I said, the fixed assets, your land and other assets, and then your long-term liabilities, which is primarily a compensated absence because you don't have any debt. And then the biggest liability that is there, and it's about 2/3 of the way down, it's called the net pension liability. It is $1,182,622. Now, that's an increase over the prior year of $856,000. That number represents the town's proportionate share of the New Hampshire retirement system's unfunded liability. That number is calculated by actuaries that the state hires. It's then audited by a different firm. It's prepared, put on a website, and the information is passed down to the town and the auditors to record in the financial statement. So that's neither a management estimate nor an auditor's estimate, and it needs to be reported on the statement in that position. That liability differs from some of the other standard liabilities which have to be paid down. This liability is going to continue to go down over time, but the town still is gonna do a pay-as-you-go, meaning that you're gonna pay in your normal amounts to the state of New Hampshire on a monthly basis based on payroll. So this liability differs slightly, but it doesn't directly impact the the tax rate, which is the most important thing.
You just said it would be going down, why did it go up then?
Well, it's gonna go up and down and fluctuate slightly because of different assumptions that the state is making. The biggest assumption that the state changed from last year to this year is called the discount rate, which is the rate of return on their investments. They essentially came through and came in line, maybe more so with the marketplace at this point in time. So when that happened, that adjusted their budget versus actual, and we're seeing the impact here.
Okay, does it represent a risk to the town at all?
The risk to the town is moderate to minor to moderate.
Okay.
More on the minor side, because this is always gonna be paid down. The state of New Hampshire retirement system would have to completely collapse, which is why this liability is then on the town's books that would have to fund that. So it is minor.
Okay.
It doesn't essentially affect your
Tax rate.
credit rating,
Okay, correct.
because the creditors have always taken into consideration the state of New Hampshire's, the way the retirement system is funded.
Okay.
And you currently don't have any long-term debt, so I consider it more of a minor.
Okay.
So that's an unfunded liability.
Correct. Means right now, they don't have the assets to cover that.
So if the state collapses, or if the state said, if the town said, you know, if that opening was given, that they wanted to withdraw, then that unfunded liability does impact the town, correct? If we pulled out of the pension plan,
If you pulled out of the pension plan, there would probably be other costs involved beyond just this.
right, but that's that unfunded liability that we would bear if that happened.
At least that amount,
Right,
so. And currently, there's really not a process in place for that to happen.
right, I understand that, it's just in case, because there's, and you know, in the whole pension system with the state, there's been a lot of back and forth, so.
Yes, and, you know, they typically will review their rates as far as the percentages on the group one and group two employees, and try and take that into consideration with everything that they're doing, so.
So that's a pretty good hook to keep everybody in line.
So, now, the next, before we turn a page, just like to draw your attention to the unrestricted number, it's the second one from the bottom. It is in brackets, it's a negative 51,238, and it's unrestricted. Now, while that's in bracket, that has actually decreased from the prior year. And part of that, the prior year negative was 184,000. So the town as a whole significantly increased their standing when you look at the change in the liability, because anytime you have a liability that's gonna increase, that's gonna affect your bottom line. Certainly, round numbers, the net pension was at 1.1 million. It increased from last year's 856,000. However, the bottom line actually increased. So as a whole, the town is in a better position on the statement of net position. That being said, I'd like to go to page 12. Page 12 is the governmental funds balance sheet. It's recorded on the modified accrual basis. It's very similar to the accounting process that is in place that you see all the time with the budget versus actual reports. There's two primary columns. There's the general column, which comprised of your general fund and your capital reserves, and then the non-major governmental funds, which is your special revenue funds, and then your permanent trust funds, those monies held by the trustees. Our focus is gonna be on the general fund. And overall, things were relatively the same or increased, meaning the cash and short-term investment of 4.1 million increased almost 800,000. Now, that's relative to a timing of when the bills are sent out in May, because this is being reported as of December 31st. That being said, the cash went up, but if we go to about the middle of the page, you have the due to school district of 3.6 million. That also increased because part of those tax bills are monies that are collected for the school. So both of those kind of go up and down in conjunction with each other. Your regular receivables were very much in line with the prior year. And then your fund balance overall, if we go to the bottom third of the page in the general column, The committed number of $302,831 represents your capital reserve monies. Those are the monies that the trustees are holding for you. Then underneath, the $103,761 called assigned, those are the current year encumbrances and non-lapsing monies that are coming forward towards the next year's budget. And then finally, your unassigned number of $268,634 is on the GAAP basis, in a better spot than it was before, because last year that number was 26,000. So as a whole, the town did much better than the prior year. And we're gonna go over how the town got there. But one other item is, the state looks at that number slightly different on the MS 535 when it comes to the time to take a look at the tax rate setting. The state looks at that number, and essentially you would add back the unavailable revenues, which is under the deferred inflows of resources, and that's because those are the unavailable revenues are the open tax receivables at year end, less the first 60 days of collections. The state looks at the amount of the tax bills as collected. So in reality, you almost have to add both of those back, because the DRA unassigned number when it comes to set the tax rate is $463,348, which again is up from the prior year number was $224,000. So again, state made good headway on rebuilding that fund balance, because when I was here last year, one of the things that came out was the fact that the town had been using fund balance for articles, but there was a good portion being used to reduce the taxes. However, the balance was going down quicker than it was replenishing. The town this year used only approximately 68,000 of fund balance, and that was towards the articles. There was no monies used to reduce the tax rate, and the effect had, a positive almost 200,000 being replenished. Again, we're gonna go into some better detail on how it got there. But as a whole, last year, the DRA would have looked at your number and said that you only had 2% reserves as compared to your normal budgeted expenditures. They usually like to see that number between 8 and 17. So you were on the lower side. But you also had to take into consideration you don't have any long-term debt. So you didn't have. So that 8 to 17 is a big gap, because it really is a town-by-town decision on what that number wants to be, because of potentially capital leases, long-term liabilities, future projects. I mean, you are putting money into capital reserves for projects. So again, it's a town-by-town situation, and that's why that gap is pretty big. But overall, the current year is at 5%. So you came up 3%, you're almost to that 8% bottom threshold. So as a whole, the town is in a much better position than last year. So, if we could turn to page 16. Page 16 is the statement of revenues and other sources and expenditures and other uses. It's your budget versus actual page. And what this page does is take the general fund budget only and compare it to those expenditures that are related to that budget. We're gonna focus on the very last column, the variance with the final budget, positive and negative. And in particular, we're gonna go to the approximately the middle of the page, and the total revenues and other sources number of $71,425, which means that your actual revenues as compared to your budget surpassed the budget number by 71,000. That, compared to looking at last year, the prior year number was actually a negative 37,000 rounded, meaning that your projections were a little higher than what actually came in. This year, it was a good year. Certainly motor vehicle permits are going up across the state as we're seeing. That was a proportion that helped out things, but then I think the town also was conservative on some of their estimates and thereby surpassed them. The next biggest thing was the use of fund balance. Again, it was only 68,000. In the prior year, it had been 200,000. In the year before that, it had been 100,000. And that was just to reduce the tax rate. There was other monies used for articles. So as a whole, the town restrained from using that fund balance in order to bring it back. If we go to the second number from the bottom, the total expenditure and other uses, of $264,361, those are monies that were unspent by departments and therefore fell back into fund balance. We look at last year's number, that number was 95,000. So the departments as a whole did a better job at curtailing those expenditures and putting money back for a grand total of 335,786 as a whole. The town had a very good year. The prior year number was 57,000, so
Did the prior year's number include the capital outlay too, which is a big number this year?
that's a big number because there were some non-lapsing items, the breathing apparatus and a couple of other things were closed out. So that's gonna help out things, so yes, that would have occurred last year as well. It would have been in there as still as a current year encumbrance. So overall, your current year encumbrances are lower than the prior year by about 176,000. So that does impact your overall fund balance as a whole. But when you look at things, certainly that's a huge help, because it didn't occur. But as a whole, the town was in a better spot on a department by department basis as well. And this really is the report, I really consider this the report card of the town, because that's what the primary focus is. While the revenues, you try and go on the conservative side, you can't really, you're not in the revenue generating type of industry. You're really looking at those expenditures and trying to make sure that you come in at budget, so.
But revenue projections are important, and I think
Yes.
the projections by the last board, they did a great job. The 71K is pretty almost spot on.
Yes, definitely. If we turn the page, really, it's the fiduciary funds, it's part of your financial statements. And what this represents is the town escrows, is approximately 23,000 of money's being held. And then the bulk of it is the school capital reserves, because the trustee of trust funds also holds on to the school trust funds and capital reserves monies. That would be on page 17. So, overall, there isn't a lot to go over on this page. I just wanted to make you aware of what the agency funds is comprised of. So, those were the financial highlights. I don't know if there's any other questions on the numbers pages that you would like to go through.
So far, it's very straightforward, thank you.
Okay. If we can go on to the second report, which is the management letter. I would like to first look at the table of contents, just so people get the right impression here. Certainly, there's some prior year recommendations, and then there's some current year recommendations. But what we don't see is any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. These are considered other comments, and on the scale of how bad they are, material weakness would be your worst type of comment, significant deficiency, and then other comments which don't have either of those notations need to be pointed out, put in a report and just brought forward for discussion purposes. So just wanted to make that clear as we're gonna go through these. If we can turn to excuse me, page 3, and we're gonna go over the prior year recommendations fairly quickly because they're still there. Improving the reconciliation with the holding accounts. We're considering the issue unresolved, and what that has to do is look at a lot of essentially payroll holding accounts that go up and down. It's a bit of a research. The amount isn't large as a whole, but it's something that's been there. So it is a research project. Given enough time, those things can be puzzled out and essentially updated and or adjusted back to zero. But at this point in time, there is still some ongoing amounts that weren't changing. So it's gonna need a little bit more research. We then have processing all the disbursements on the town's manifest. These are really representative of your special revenue funds. Meaning when we talk about these things, these are expenditures that are paid, but they're not going through the manifest. They're paid by manual check still. And best business practices would deem it to be pointed out that they should be going through the manifest process as a whole, so that the board is looking at them, because what could happen is that if an expenditure were found to be unfavorable, everyone would look at the town as far as those monies, how did that occur? So if it goes through the manifest process, it at least then goes through another set of eyes.
Can I just point out a couple things? Cobbler Restoration's been closed out,
Okay?
and then the Dare account has been closed out, but that was in early year of this 2017, so we've done away with 2 of those checkbooks. I did discuss this with the treasurer. She said that the only one that she would like, that she has difficulties complying with this, cause she's working with me very closely, is the fire department equipment has checks that she had to pay for, and they were expensive, so she would like to go through the process of using those checks. They're just to pay for the billing collections of the claims, that we hire a company for our collections. It's their small bills that, but she said, once those are gone, these other accounts, she assured me that we would work together and process all the invoices through accounts payable, so they get put on the manifest.
The risk is it does increase workload on the current administrative personnel,
Well, I think
True.
but it gets another set of eyes on it.
Correct.
So you get a balance there.
Correct, and that's why, I mean, we're not looking at this as a material weakness or a significant deficiency, but best business practice would be to bring it to your attention.
Yeah.
And I guess if we were looking at a potential mitigating factor, even on this fire department equipment, if those invoices were then included in the manifest so that the board signed off on those, we could look at that as a mitigating factor in things, because essentially you would be looking at those signing off just like on the manifest as well. So that is a consideration as well.
Okay.
Number 3, improving year-end cutoff procedures. In the current year, we didn't have any issues, and what this is dealing with is when we come into audit as of 12/31, we're also gonna be looking at expenditures that are being recorded against the next year's budget, because we wanna make sure that the expenditures are on the right side of the line. In the prior year, there was a couple of situations, so, we brought forward the comment. However, in this year's testing, we didn't have any issues, so we consider this improving year-end cutoff procedures result.
Let's do, we're working towards a resolution to make it even streamline it for our town personnel. The biggest problem is credit card purchases. And we wanna make sure credit cards, there's a cutoff date where we have enough time from the post before the end of the year.
Right.
And that's one example of what we're trying to do.
Okay. Improving the cash reconciliation process. In the prior year, there was some issues with timeliness, reconciling items. In the current year, again, we noted that the timing of the cash reconciliations weren't consistent. So we're kind of bringing that forward. They were much cleaner than the year before, meaning that when we were looking at them, it was much more organized than it had been. There was a changing of how it was being done within the finance office. Certainly there was improvement there, but again, could improve further by getting those in a more timely fashion. Current year recommendations, reconciling tax receivables. And what we're talking about here is when we're looking at the tax collector's MS-61, the individual tax balances, and then we look at the general ledger, we noted some minor variances. Again, it wasn't considered a material weakness or significant deficiency, but there were some variances there that need to be noted. The side comment to that was, and I think it's being worked out, and has been worked out, that within the BMSI software, there was some merger type of issues when the tax collector was transmitting information over to BMSI and some information crisscrossing. So that did factor into those variances, but it's one of those things to look at year end to make sure that MS-61 is agreeing to the town's ledger, and if not, why?
Was that the software, Word Rounds,
No, in that case, if there's, a merge into the fund side, and then the tax collector has a bounced check, and then she has to back the information out, it could be something similar to that, but Patrick's recommended that that merged report that I get matches, that I confirm matches with the tax collector's, summary sheet, that she reviews my export and we sign off on it, so I think it's perfect.
Like double check on each.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea, we hadn't thought about that, but I
Okay.
think that's something you'll see a lot more for the future.
Perfect, because there are things, and that, you know, that happens in a lot of communities when, things are being merged from one side to the other. Potentially new accounts or structure can certainly impact that, and then the typical one is the bounce check and/or odd transactions that are occurring on one side and aren't necessarily flowing to the other. So it's not something that is fraudulent in nature, it's just something that is a case of, really just need to look at it and make sure, because you get to the end of the year and you could have had these things happening multiple months, and, that's not the time with everything at year end to be wanting to do.
Exactly.
There's enough to do at year end,
Yeah,
so.
Make sure of that.
that was a good recommendation, I like that one.
Improving controls of the library disbursements. In addition to what we look at, we were also looking at what the library does, how its internal controls work, and we did some spot testing on the expenditures, and what we found was that, all the vendors' invoices should include a documented approval for payment. In multiple cases, they weren't being approved. The credit card should be used for business purposes only. Found that it had been repaid because we made sure that that was done, but it had a minor charge. And it should be just for business purposes, just for transparency, just so everyone knows what it's being done.
You see minor charges with personal charge on there?
Yeah. All authorized employee rates of pay should be documented as well. So when we went to look at the payroll, no different than the town, we want to be able to trace that right back to an employee action form to make sure that what is there on file, what's in the system, agree. Certainly with limited employees, it can be a case of what we know, but it really is a case that it needs to be documented, and that's the way a lot of the auditing standards are going. The Department of Labor wants to see that, so that's just not even an auditor, the Department of Labor wants to see those things on file. And then the library's weekly payroll should be approved by a library trustee or treasurer, basically talking about the payroll manifest. That should go through a similar process. Other current year issues, these were just bullet point type of items. Authorizing the transfer of capital reserve should be made in a timely manner. There was a point where monies hadn't been moved from the town side to the trustee side. That really needs to be done within the time period. You do have up until December. I typically recommend making it as of December 1st. November's better only because they meet once a month, and you really wanna make sure that the monies are in, because if not, you run into a problem where you're gonna show that the money's transferred, they're not gonna show it on the MS9, there's gonna be a reconciling issue. So if you get it done on the sooner than later, it usually flows through.
That was on my part, sorry, but we'll work on that.
Okay.
General ledger due to new funds, transfers in and out. That has to do with the other funds. Just really needs to be looked at it on a monthly basis. We had some expense classifications in the MS 232 and the MS 434. The 232 is your expenditures and appropriations, and the 434 is your revenues. And the state has certain classifications that it likes to see where those budgets and expenditures are being done, and just need to pay closer attention to how those are falling in. And then we've had this in the past, we're bringing it forward just because of the receivables, but the tax collector and clerk daily cash out should include the signature of the preparer and a reviewer, just to improve documented oversight. Again,
Two sets of eyes.
2 sets of eyes. Best business practices, if possible, and when it can be done. Understanding that there is limited employees, it does make it difficult, but it's a good business practice to be able to do. So, but overall, again, the town is making strides, as a whole. You know, when we look at a couple of the New Year recommendations, they are recommendations from what we've seen. You know, our job is to really look at everything and come to you each year with the potential recommendation and or point out that, you know, things are moving forward. So I'm not saying that you would never get to the point of not having a management letter, but again, we look at things as a whole, so, overall, I thought that the audit went well. The staff that we talked to and worked with in getting documentation went very well. And that as a whole, especially the cash reconciliation piece, was a night and day as compared to the prior year, being able to get that done. So, as a whole, I think the town is in a better spot than it was last year.
I think you brought a few points to light that I'll definitely be looking at a little closer as well.
If you answered the questions along the way, thank you, it's been great. I think it's scary to understand it.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you very much for inviting me in, because I do enjoy coming in and going over these reports, because you get to see an end product, but there's a lot of work on the town side from all the departments putting in efforts to answer our questions, pull out documents, go back in time a little bit. So when we get here, and it may be it probably gone on a little bit long, but when we go over and just hit the highlights, it seems like it's quick.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that go
It's
into
good to
it.
put a face with it as well.
Yeah,
Well, not everybody invites me in, so it's nice to use.
thank you. Appreciate your time. Yeah. I appreciate those.
Everybody have a chance to sign the pad and put their name.
Working on it.
There's one over here if you'd rather move to the front. Come on, home.
It's like three different forms. Yes,
No, I know. All right, we'll do
absolutely. That's the first one. Okay. Everyone looks all apprehensive tonight. Okay, next on the agenda, we're gonna talk about a citizen's complaint about the farm operation that has been brought to the attention of the board regarding Story Hill Road and Stark Highway South. It was brought by Paul Modeski. Moduleski, stand corrected, sir. And sir, we're in receipt of your email, I think we've all read it, and we are equally as concerned as you are.
Okay.
Okay, I think, I just wanna open up, I think there was some, non-adherence to town policies were basically, with the appearance, there was some no adherence to town policies as this operation went forward. And I think we're still in investigation mode right now. I think, you provided some good information, your photographs were good. We sent a town official actually visited that place this afternoon, made some observations. And at this point, we're gonna consult with, we're gonna get a consensus from the board tonight. We're gonna consult with our attorney and see what our next steps are. We're gonna do it methodically, we're gonna do it step by step, and do it the legal in the right way. But it's obvious that the building department was bypassed, it's obvious that the planning board was bypassed. And there are structures out there, there's electrical out there, there's plumbing out there, there's a well out there, and the building department has an empty folder.
I mean, this is not the first time that I addressed this issue at the town,
Okay,
and it was kind of received, I'll say, wishy-washy, for lack of a better term.
tonight, it is not, I'm gonna assure you tonight, it's not gonna be wishy-washy. We hear your complaint loud and clear, and I think there's, with what, the planning board chairman went down there today, made some, very interesting observations. And, right now, I feel, this is a serious issue right now.
And so the board understands it's the end of the season there, so what was probably witnessed today was not the norm during the height of the season.
Understood, but it was just from his point of view, he gave us some observations, and those were even more disturbing than the fact that we had an empty envelope. Okay, I'm gonna ask my fellow selectmen for comments, and we're gonna open up for some public comment. Okay.
I think I'd like to hear both sides and see what everything feels before I make any comments.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
We are direct abutters, or 320 Stark Highway
Okay.
South, and we, boy, for the last, I don't know how many few years, it's been going on. They haven't been,
Just for the record,
Yep.
because we're being taped,
yep,
if you guys could state your name and address, just so
Sure.
we have it on
That would be
there.
helpful.
sure, Lynn Kirchen, 320 Stark Highway South. So they haven't been the best neighbors, you know, there's trash and things that's been blown over, but we kind of just let it go, trying to be good neighbors, and then I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we woke up and everything's clear cut. I mean, it's right up to our line. I mean, all the trees, there's very little border, there's very little privacy. We have concerns because the whole lot, there appears to be a house lot or a building lot and a driveway, down this, you know, by our street, and at the top of the hill where we overlook the cornfield, there just appears to be, you know, it's completely cleared out, so.
Now, can you explain to me where your property is? Is it south of their property?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
on the south line.
On the same side of the road?
Yes,
Okay, so you're
Yes.
directly,
we are directly, so our property line is where,
that's
Right.
theirs, okay.
Yeah.
So your house actually sits back past their property a little bit?
A
it
little
does,
bit,
it,
yeah,
right,
probably 100, 200 feet.
yeah,
Yeah. So you got
Now
that
this-
long driveway that goes down and
Yeah.
out,
we do,
okay.
yep,
And
yep,
now there's a
Just
big,
trying to get familiar
Yeah.
with where
now
you
there's
are.
like a big lumber truck road that goes parallels to our driveway. That's just going down this steep hill and then into the lot that they cleared in the front.
Mhm.
There's like a line of trees left on, when you get to the top of the hill, there's just like one row of trees now between the two lots, ours and theirs. And, it's just, a little surprising.
Logging sometimes does get that way.
Yeah,
Sir?
Arvin Rain, 317 Stark Highway South, direct abutter. The other thing that, I don't know who walked out there today and what they saw, but I don't know if this is even relevant, but for the longest time, there were 2 or 3 PVC pipes in the ground, and I had no idea what that was. It almost looked like an old landfill. I don't know what's under there, or if you guys know anything about that.
No.
Not sure what it was.
What area of the property are you talking about?
It was probably closer to the road, maybe 40 yards from 13.
So it was in the treed section that just got cleared?
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah, I mean, that place, it's, you know, you guys know in November, it's not the prettiest thing to look at. It's just,
Understood.
there's a lot of debris.
Any other public comment on the, yes, sir?
Mark Rondo, 15 Story Hill Road.
Yes,
That property basically surrounds my property.
okay,
So, we had some concerns. We found out that the land was gonna be sold about 9 months ago, I believe, by chance, through an email. We buy our vegetables from them, and because of that, we received their weekly email letters. And then we found out that the land was gonna be sold, and we were concerned because of some of the issues that the other abutters have brought up with trash being thrown into our yard. And, you know, just the use of the land, the structures that were being built, and there just seemed to be more and more structures being built. So we were concerned that this farm was gonna be surrounding us, you know. And so we worked, I guess they're using a farming agency to help with the sale of the land. Then we actually spoke to Ian. He came out to the house, and we had some concerns about how many trees they're gonna be taking down. We were told that they were gonna take a few trees down so that they could plant some fruit trees. And then, you know, I wake up last Monday and it looks like a bomb went off over there, you know, so.
And you're on the same side of the road as that?
He's actually down Stark Highway,
Down Story
Story
Hill,
Hill, and
that's
he's
right.
got a 5-acre lot right in the middle, and it wraps around.
2.5 acres.
Or 2 acre, oh, that's,
Yeah.
okay.
You're on the
so-
same side as where they enter into the lot on Story Hill.
Exactly, yeah, you know, with the last house on the right. So basically, if they look at the plot map, we're surrounded by them.
okay. Yes, sir.
Samuel DeWeingart, I don't know if I'm a direct abutter, but directly across the street from their, opening now. And it's just been nonstop. I mean, coming here today, there was somebody who was driving in there now, you know? So I guess how long logging is gonna go on, and, I mean, I talked to the people over there, and they were saying that they were, just doing a select cut. I mean, that's clearly a lot. I mean,
I have to share that one thing, one document they did have is a logging permit.
They did have an intent to cut. Unfortunately, they did not fill out the area that they were going to cut. They just listed the whole acreage.
or how much they were gonna cut, or anything.
There's a line for them to include that acreage that they're gonna cut, but that was left blank, so that would have been a Department of Revenue Administration to question that, if that's a norm for an intent to cut, but nothing.
Do they list the board feet?
It's a very small cut, and I think I gave it to a copy to one of yours, and it's public record, so it's.
It should be on their tree too, right, out front?
It should be, yep, a copy for the logger, yep. They do fade, but we have copies here in the office if you need a copy.
Does it have to specify what it's for beyond just, like, getting the trees? Like, if they have an intent to use it for something once the trees are gone?
No,
No.
that
No,
would,
that'll be just the tree type that they're gonna be taking out of there and
and the board
harvesting.
feet.
Okay.
Whether they're gonna do chipping, or whether they're gonna take oak or pine, or.
Yeah, there were no big numbers on it, so it's not a real, didn't sound like a big cut to me.
Does anyone know if it's closed, this property is closed? Has the
Closed.
sale gone through
No,
for the
as
transfer?
of today, it has not been recorded at the registry of deeds, and that's what, we access that daily, and there's been no transfer.
Okay, anyone else from the butters or neighbors? Go ahead, sir.
Paul Modulewski, I'm a direct abutter also. I'd like you folks to explain, in a little more detail, current use, how that's affected. In essence, there's been business running over there for 6-7 years. I understand that her tax liability on that property is less than $100 a year.
That's correct,
Yeah.
it's all in current use.
That is very disturbing,
Absolutely.
very disturbing. And furthermore, the place where she lives now, I understand is some kind of conservation easement, so she's not paying any taxes on that home either. Now, there's a lot of people in Dunbarton whose taxes go up every year, and I think I can speak for all of them, find this very disturbing, that this is allowed to go on. And I really hope that it is followed up on and something is done about this. Because they have been nothing but, they haven't been helpful at all. We've tried communication with Stone and Hammond, and nothing. The last time they logged, they were using the class 5 road there at the end of March, when the road was all muddy, trying to pull stuff out of there instead of the winter time. We have to pay to keep the road up.
You meant class 6, right?
Class 6.
Class 6 is what the.
Yep.
So they were using that for their logging?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the road agent had come down, cause I parked, they were just kind of ignoring me, so I parked my truck in the road. And then, obviously, we had a talk. But, the road agent came down, and at that point, they stopped bringing trees up. It was clear that the road was thawing out and it was starting to do damage.
Class 6, the owners, the abutters are responsible for maintaining it, so that's their argument, is that they're using logging trucks to access a class 6. And it's,
I mean, the whole tone over there and it's a while now, has been just, it's been continually growing with no oversight, no nothing. But rest assured, there's been a business, they are selling product, they're even talking about a farm stand. I don't know for a fact, but it would be, I think you can assume that Stone and Hammond were getting some kind of compensation from whoever by providing their property for these farmers to farm. And the whole thing just kind of stinks, to tell you the truth.
I hear you. Okay.
Well, we gotta do some research, because there are a lot of agricultural uses on property that are
But
protected.
not their buildings.
Well, depending on the type of structures, and I saw some of the pictures, but depending on how the state and the agricultural department looks at those buildings, we're gonna probably follow up on that and check with that and have our departments look at it, because some of that stuff is protected by agricultural use, so we wanna make sure not to, jump on somebody's toes until we do our research and homework on it. Now, you said you had brought this before a prior board.
Probably my my own fault. I didn't bring it technically to a board with a letter and ask for a response. It was more just verbal conversation about what's going on there, what our options are, that type of thing.
Was it at a meeting, a regular?
It was not at a
meeting?
regular meeting, so
Okay.
let's be clear about that.
Okay.
Was it it was the building department level, is that what it
Yeah.
was? Okay.
Do you remember when that was? Was it a year ago or two or?
About between 6 months and a year ago.
Okay.
There is clear intent to put dwellings there. I went on the Aura site, I don't know, has anyone?
Oh, yeah.
gone there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
paragraph, I'll just kind of paraphrase it, the benefits of the projects are immense, there are many. We hope to provide, a model for future properties, create a permanent farmstead that offers refugee farmers a place to grow food as well as live. So there's intent.
So I guess my question is that I know that you need to look into things, but in the meantime, is there any way to stop what's going on there? Because until someone stops them, I believe they probably have full intention of continuing.
This is not gonna be on the back burner for us. We're gonna
Okay.
bring it to the front.
Okay.
The thing is, it's not gonna go on for months
All right.
without no action.
Okay,
The
good,
thing is, we may not have the answer you want,
yep,
but the thing is, again, we get wind of this afternoon.
okay,
And so you gotta help us out here.
all right, just a
and,
little left.
Yeah. Good, Leo Martell.
Leo Martell, 125 Tin Hill Road. To follow up on this gentleman's remarks about the housing, I was at a meeting, I believe in March, with the Conservation Commission when they approached them, and they did say they plan on a 4-family unit there.
That is correct, I was at that meeting, there was rumors, it was in the paper, but.
They were there, they did state that.
Yeah.
And you brought that to our next select
Right,
meeting
I
right
did
after
mention
that.
it to
You
you.
made us aware of
Yeah.
that too.
So, I mean, that's definitely their intent.
Right, but
Now, if I was doing something similar, what would happen with me? Would I get a cease and desist order, or could I just continue?
well, they haven't built a house yet, they're already
Well,
started to.
with what they're doing now.
That's something we're gonna investigate. As I said, there's it's being used agriculturally.
Right.
The thing is, I know there's water out there being pumped from a well which never had a permit. There's electricity out there which never got,
But that's kind of my point.
right, that's what we have to figure out what our next step is.
I mean, if it was me, I'll bet you there'd be a paper right there in my hand, cease and desist.
It may be one of our options.
Can I just speak, only because I'm here 5 days a week? I just wanna speak for the town officials that hear or work for the public on a day-to-day basis. When we were told about the potential of a 4-unit project possibly occurring at that location back in March, it was something that was hearsay that hadn't gone through the process, and the assumption for anyone who buys properties is to inquire as to the building permit process, how do I go about getting to the next level, and we've not heard or been approached by anyone for that. So I can say I feel bad, like maybe I failed you, but we were never told that there was a well on the property, that there was electricity on the property, and what we did hear, and I assumed, and maybe I assumed wrong, that it was an open field of farming, and which is allowed. But now, after seeing pictures that are right through the woods, that now I'm sure you can see even better without the trees,
Yeah.
that there are structures there. Are they defined as structures? There's more than structures, there's electricity, and so I think now that the town has been that's been brought to our attention, we've got the assessor involved, the building inspector's been brought up to speed. He's a health officer, we'll definitely send him out there for, conditions as to whether they meet, a number of different possible.
There are safety issues concerned, there are safety issues, fire issues, there are, is there enough adequate, porta potty issues?
Right.
There are numerous issues which need to be addressed, which were just brought to light hours ago. So the thing is, with this board, I'm gonna speak for my 2 colleagues, we don't wanna do a knee-jerk reaction and put the town at risk for being a liability, but the thing is, obviously, something has to be done. And we wanna do it with fact, we wanna be methodical about it, but we wanna do it in a timely manner. We don't wanna wait till 6 months from now and decide to do something. obviously, it's an issue and it's on the front burner for us.
One thing, yeah, so what we could do now, and I think that maybe we'll check with Brian, no, he's the forester, so check on their intent to cut and their forestry portion of it. Make sure that their setbacks from their boundaries and their wetlands are being met, so we'll probably contact him tomorrow and have him take a look at that, so that's one step that we can take immediately and, you know, at least have the state forester look at that.
I mean,
So-
there's wetlands right in the front to the left of where they were cutting, I don't know if they stopped because of that, but that whole area in there is wet.
Yeah, so we'll have him look at that and, have him get back to us with a report on that. That's one step that we'll probably start with, and
I have one other concern, because I know you brought up the porta potty situation over there, and 20, 30, 40 workers, one porta potty. That's all the way on the other side of the property, right on Story Hill Road.
Understood?
So let's now say that they need 8 porta potties, and I'm just pulling numbers out of the air, for the amount of people they have there. They're gonna be lined up right alongside where I can see them from my property?
Don't know yet. In fact, I think the business is being run as a business without even being processed through the planning board. We have a planning board for approving businesses as they start up in town. And to include agricultural businesses. And Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but the thing is, this has not gone through any review process,
There's nothing been done over it.
with the exception of one permit pulled for tree removal. Harvesting, excuse me. It wasn't removal, it was harvesting.
They have large greenhouses out there. Did those require permits, you know, or would they?
There's a good possibility they do require permits, yes, and they were, obviously, we have an empty folder there, so that's a concern
On
of
that
us.
as well?
Say again?
On that as well?
Yes.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
cause that's been out there 5, 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, I looked up the definition
Oh, yeah.
in multiple cities and towns of temporary structure, and by no means do those structures fall under any of that criteria.
Oh, exactly, I totally agree, they look more permanent than temporary.
Correct.
And so, again, those are issues which we're defining right now and investigating right now.
Okay, I mean, personally, I think I speak for everyone, just wanna convey what's going on
Oh,
here.
I think we hear you loud and clear.
And just to add, in the meantime, there's possibility that there's state agencies that would get into this, you know, that would help us further along to control what's going on. You know, I'm not 100% positive, but I'm looking at some of what was seen and some of the agencies that may be contacted, and they may be able to bring a short resolution, while we look for a permanent resolution.
You know, and I know that you know this, but, you know, we've lived there for 20-something years. We've lived with that farm for the last 4 or 5, whatever it is, and coexisted because we wanted to be good neighbors, and we were fine, you know, we were fine with that. There were issues, but you always kind of have issues with neighbors. And I think why we're here is that, again, all of a sudden it was done without consulting us, without have any regard for the neighborhood at all, without allowing us to at least have this conversation. You know, we might have said, okay, great, if everything is gonna fall within guidelines, we're fine with it, but we had no idea. And so I think the shock is waking up one day, as we all did, and we're, holy cow, this is completely empty, so.
That's been their process the whole time. They haven't, they didn't let us know that the property was gonna be sold. If I hadn't reached out to them, I would have not known that any of this was gonna
Well,
happen.
I'm disappointed in the fact that it appears to have been disregard of the process.
Right.
We have a process in this town for building, we have a process for safety inspections, we have a process for doing things in town. And there's some appears to be blatant disregard of that. That's very concerning to me, I'm sure to my fellow selectmen. And that's why we are concerned, because we have rules for a reason, and we don't wanna create a chaos.
I just wanna reiterate, stuff like logging, people can do without notifying a butter. Selling the property, they could do without notifying a butter. So some of the things, just, you know, we have to stay within our realm of what we actually can do, because people have property rights as well. Just like you guys all have property rights,
Yeah,
so.
but building they can't, and, to follow on like the good neighbor policy, I kept a low-key profile about it, because there's giant greenhouses out there, there's 4, maybe 5.
More, I think
They're
there's 7
huge.
structures.
Yeah, we have some
But
pictures
the
here.
greenhouses alone are huge, and I just assumed that they had building permits or whatever they had to go through to get that stuff. I had no idea that it was all
Right.
not legit. Otherwise, I certainly would have brought it to the board. I would have said, if I knew like they didn't do a well pump, but I don't know how was that missed? You can almost see it from Route
It
13, you can
appears
see it
that
from
they-
Story Lane.
It appears they have a disregard for the regulatory process from what we're looking at, you know, for the town's regulatory process of going through things. As one gentleman mentioned, if he was doing the same thing on his property, in fact, I think the guy built a shed and had complaints, so. I mean, you know, it's strange that this has occurred and has so much accumulation there before it reached the board, but I mean, we're certainly gonna act on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat, I mean, I just assumed that the structures went up, and
Yeah.
they were probably permitted, you know, the well went, I knew the well was being put in, but I didn't, I mean,
And just so you guys are all aware, you know, selectmen's meetings every Thursday night are open to the public, so if you have something new or a new concern that comes up, feel free to come in, and you don't have to be on the agenda to come in, and we have a public comment area, you come in and, you know, just state your name and your address, and you can voice any concern or new concern you have.
You know, go ahead, sir.
I have a concern moving forward with the, two concerns actually, with the proposed house. I think that, based on what they were talking about, 4 or 6 family, single unit. But this is a federally funded program, there's a lot of funds, I think, coming from some federally funded programs. Is the town of Dunbarton have to kowtow because the feds wanna come in and,
We have our own zoning regulations, we have our own regulations regarding housing sizes, setbacks, and all that, all still applicable, they don't get voided out. And the thing is, we do have a thing called workforce housing too.
that was gonna be my next question.
We
It's funny that that came in just recently and now we're here at this situation.
But we can't act on the fact that they're just proposing it, as Lean said, anyone can have an idea to build
No,
a property.
I totally understand.
Right, I mean, if they were building a property today, the building inspector could say cease and desist immediately if they were building any structure at this point. And now that we know that, any new structure going up there, feel free to let us know, because we can't be everywhere at the same time.
But apparently the town just found out they have all those big buildings, the
Well,
greenhouses there.
correct.
There's
well-
nothing you can do about that.
Well, there may be.
Yeah.
And you know, that just got opened up, so the public eyes are looking at the property a lot more than they used to as
Yeah.
well.
Well,
I gotta be honest, I never noticed it until somebody pointed it out to me, that they were out there.
I
I
think
don't
the clear-
drive,
clear-
nobody drives down Stone Road, you know?
clear cutting.
Story Road rather, and so, you know, there were a lot of thick, it was pretty dense along 13, and I
The
really
key
never
word
noticed
was-
it until someone
Yes.
pointed them out to me, and that was just at the beginning of this year.
Yep.
Well,
So,
you
you
can't see
know.
the forest from the trees, but when they're gone,
You can see
when they're
it
gone, there it
but,
is.
you know,
But
so,
even though they've been there 5 or 6 years, like if I built an illegal structure last month, or was in the middle of building one, I'd probably get a cease and desist the next day. Just because it's been 5 or 6 years and the town's just finding out about it. There's nothing that can be immediately done to
Well,
like,
giving them
maybe
an
leverage
assist,
the
a
logging
cease and desist on
temporarily.
something that's up won't stop them from anything, so.
Right.
We've
Well,
gotta
I
go
would have
through
to
the
probably
proper
take it
steps.
down, I'd probably either have to go through, the paperwork and stuff, and pay fees
We,
and fines and.
those are some of the avenues we're gonna be addressing.
Okay,
Okay, so, I can't sit here and say, oh, we're gonna demand it get down. That's a knee-jerk
no,
reaction.
yeah, yeah.
And so the thing is, we wanna make sure we do things in a legal way that doesn't put the town in liability, but we wanna make sure, bring everyone into adherence. For example, Lean said something very important today, obviously it appears to be a business, and the structure's up there, and there's a land use penalty which has not been paid, and the thing is, there's also an appraisal, that's why she contacted the appraiser in town. The thing is, there's property taxes that need to be paid, there's land use penalties have to be paid. No one has stepped up to the plate from the owners to let us know what's happening with there. So, all those things, and we're not talking about small sums of money, that's a large sum of money that we're talking about.
It's a big operation.
Right, and so, facts, you brought it to attention, we hear you, and the thing is, now, you say, the ball's in our court, and we have to do some work,
Help us,
and that's what we wanna do. We wanna help Dunbarton as a town.
yeah.
And tax penalties and use penalties can go back from when that operation began, or
It's,
what's the criteria for that?
The assessor did answer that, he said that knowing, he read your letter, and he said we can't go back past 12 months, past this last year, but we can penalize them this current year and then adjust the assessment in the same current year based on the fact that it was, typically you can't get a current use penalty and new assessment in the same calendar year. Knowing, now that they were in that place prior, they'll assess the current use penalty because it was disturbed, and then they'll change the current use value in the same calendar year. But again, we have to go through the Board of Assessors, and then I'm hoping that the board will support some legal interpretation.
So then they're not liable for property taxes that weren't paid based on the use of the property for prior years?
Well, first of all, we have to determine that they're due taxes on the base this year.
Understand?
And then look at those, I mean, there are a lot of wide agricultural uses in the state we've gotta make sure to follow up on, because I'm not sure about these particular, greenhouses, but they may be protected by some sort of agricultural use, so we gotta do some deep research here, without overstepping or speaking too soon, because,
Yeah,
we just gotta research.
we're not subject matter experts. We have a lawyer who can, basically, a town lawyer, a town attorney.
No, I respect
No,
how you guys are
but we're
looking
gonna
at it.
consult with them
Yeah.
and make sure we do everything by the book. We have a municipal association which we're gonna consult for advice. There's a variety of resources we have. We're gonna reach out to state agencies, which Bob talked about.
and I think the way the assessor explained it, that type of structure may fall under the agricultural use and have little to no value to it, but the land it's on has been disturbed, and that is reason for disqualifying the land, because it's now improved on. That's a different situation from an assessment. It may not, it'll have land value with minimal structure value.
But is a business able to run on a property that's in current use?
Well, again, we'll have to check the agricultural type
Yeah.
of businesses. There are a lot of them farm stands around the state that are probably operating the same way, so we've gotta check into that and make sure.
Yeah,
You
it
know.
would take a legal interpretation from our attorney to find out, exactly.
Right, I
What-
mean, I agree, it's better that when you make a move, you're better to make the move that you can back up than,
Yeah, we don't wanna jump down there and, as Mike says, knee jerk. These people around either, we'd like to look into it and look into it with our different departments and then go from there, and I think, maybe if we can have a period of time to do this, maybe we can notify the abutters if we have another meeting to talk about it again.
Right.
The initial impression that we have as selectmen, I think I can speak, it's disturbing. Okay? And the thing is, we appreciate you bringing it up, and we wish we nipped it earlier, but the thing is, we are where we are today, and we have to move out smartly with what we can find out.
Alright.
So we'll hear something tomorrow.
As I said, I heard a lot today, trust me.
I'm gonna leave you guys with just one idea. You guys know where Devereaux Farm is in Goffstown? That's a smaller piece of property, or it was originally, until I think they bought a second parcel, that is allowed for current use. But because he did more than $2,500 a year in farming on that property, he was allowed current use protection from the state there. And I'm not sure, he has similar greenhouses on there too, and I'm sure they're probably assessed with the town. But that's the type of agricultural background that I wanna give you guys, that, some of these things may be protected under the agricultural and current use, things from the state, so.
Even where they didn't say that they were a business with the town?
I'm not sure about that aspect of it, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
as far as the structures go and the current use and all this stuff, there may be some of those things that are protected, so. We'll check into both sides of it, obviously, and whatever we can, make sure they're regulated on, we will.
Okay,
Alright, thank you.
All right, thanks.
thank you for attending, and we'll be in communication with you all.
Alright.
Thank you.
Oh, Ken.
Yes, sir.
Planning Board Chairman, Ken Swayze, he's the town official today that went out, did a walkabout today on their property. Could you share some of your observations, or do you have any comments, sir?
Well, let's look at their side a little bit, like Mr. Knoll did. Agriculture is allowed on 100% of Dunbarton's terrain. They're doing a classical agricultural operation out there. There are no animals involved, so that's good. They'd have to come to the planning board for that. Zoning wise, they are permitted to be doing what they're doing. Procedural wise, they have not done anything proper. I don't know how they even got a permit for the electric to run the well, for instance. I can see that they could get somebody to come in and put a well in, but usually somebody from the town or somebody else has to sign off on getting power for that well. As Mr. Knoll pointed out, logging is permitted also by state statute, the RSA's. I looked at the logging operation, it appears to be okay. So that's gonna be a tough one to challenge. Somebody brought up the housing, like a 4-unit housing, this gentleman here, the abutter. That's permitted by the town zoning also. It's called multi-use housing, or, you know, once you go past 3 units or something, it is, you know, multiple housing. It's allowed, and they would require 11 acres to do that. Don't be confused about workforce housing. That terminology is not correct for what you're thinking it is. Workforce housing is completely something else. It has nothing to do with farm workforce or anything. It's actually classical housing, just done differently. So that doesn't apply to that. There is, this thing was brought up a while ago about those structures, and we do have a thing about temporary things, but typically it's like if somebody has a wedding and they put up a tent or something, it's expected to be able to be removed in 1 day. That's not the case here. I believe there's a lot of other procedural things that are faulty. I think some state agencies would also be interested in this project also. There's life safety things at hand. Department of Labor needs to be brought in. The Department of Safety, I talked to the building inspector today, everything from plumbing to other, you know, health issues. The gentleman was right about the one porta potty.
Yeah.
That was just pretty, I did not see 80 people there, but I'll tell you, I saw more than enough people for one porta potty. Some of the buildings, are you the gentleman that took the picture with the styrofoam in the buildings and stuff like that? I mean, that suggests that these are more than temporary, that they're taking care of them year round. Lean brought up an excellent thing about we're not getting any value on that property. I've got 2 storage sheds on my own property, just little ones. One's for gardening and one's for forestry things like chainsaws. When I pay more taxes on those little storage sheds than they're paying down there. So it's just not right for like the rest of us. You do have to watch what you're doing. Agriculture and certain things are protected, as Mr. Knoll pointed out, by state statute. And we do have to take our time to make sure this is done appropriately. But as Mr. Martell, Leo, pointed out, if he did something or I did something like that and neighbors complained, I think this town would have reacted a lot quicker. It's not, it hasn't happened. I think they should be allowed to do what they intend to do because we are zoned for agriculture, but there needs to be some procedures followed and policies. Other things, I can go on all night. I mean, even the road, I drove in there. That road, I don't know how you, it's just not that drivable. I have a 4-wheel drive, 2,500, you know,
You should have
GMC.
it months ago.
Yeah, I thought of that. You know, what happens like, you know, the rain season, I heard they're also operating during all seasons somehow out there. Is that right, for the most part?
They're out there in March.
I mean, so, they just need to do like everybody else and let us know what's going on.
I don't think they've approached you for a 911 address, have they?
You know,
They approached the fire department for,
I brought that up today, if there was an emergency response, you know, I don't know if everybody knows where they are.
Structure, they don't need a
Pardon?
911. There's no permanent structure, they don't need a 911.
That's to be determined whether the structure's permanent. It looks pretty permanent what they're inferring here.
Well, like you said, you better do some more investigating.
Exactly. Okay, thank you, Ken.
Yep.
And there's more work ahead. All right, we're gonna go on, continue on to the general town business, we're gonna do our inbox. If you all wanna lead
Let's
someone.
just ask if there's any more public comment on this subject.
I think we pretty much got it.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome, thank you.
Thanks for coming in. You know your family on this list.
Yes.
Your wife's on your
Seriously.
Is she doing?
The owner of the property
Yeah.
wasn't invited.
Maybe she
was. Can you sign that?
Decline, respectfully.
Maybe she was.
That bothers me.
Workforce no longer goes by the state's median income. New Hampshire is one of the highest
Yeah, obviously it says
median
something,
income.
but they
So
haven't-
when someone takes workforce.
I don't know.
housing,
Must have
it's to do
like the
with
network.
the
These people weren't called in
person's
anyway.
wage, which is-
They were coming no matter
They were
what.
just coming.
No matter what.
They weren't called, so that's probably why they didn't.
We could have called you. We will have called you.
This thing was brought up a while
Philip,
ago.
All right, you wanna continue talking with this, do we have any more comment, you just wanna talk about?
3 months ago?
Yeah, well, keep it real. All right. We're gonna go to the journal inbox now. I have,
Mailbox.
yes, ma'am.
I'm just waiting on this.
Okay.
Canal, but,
Dave, this was an email, John Stevens,
Or you.
follow
Stick around.
on, electricity.
No, I'm
See
talking
that?
about,
I did see that email,
yeah.
and, it was nice to see that, all the rates are the same as far as the supply costs. Although I was interested in seeing that the school supply cost was, 8, 9, 10, 11, 3 cents cheaper. So again, he's gonna work with, maybe seeing what the costs are for a business model to, check into some, like Freedom Logistics to see if we can get a reduced rate on the town as a whole.
It was interesting about the school, I thought, the information you revealed about the school. other
Yeah, and I was thinking that we should be trying to contact the people that supplied that, but they seem to do much larger facilities than
Right.
our town's usage.
6 times, these schools, 6 times in all our buildings.
Right.
Keep the building warm. Okay, the next item. I have something from, environmental consultants, this is information only. I can't make heads or tails of this.
It's actually, just, the work that they're gonna be doing on the utility poles, and this is a permitting process, they have to apply through the town clerk, and she's notifying you for FYI.
It's actually a power line that I own property on, but they're putting 3 new pole structures in there, similar kind, that need replacement.
I thought you wanted the really tall ones.
Only if we can tax them more on it. So that's
We
what they're
will.
doing, they're replacing 3 poles, and there's a permitting in here, and they're showing that there are, 2 types of snakes and 1 type of turtle in that area, although none have been seen by the poles in the right of way. They had to notify the state of those issues.
All right, then we have,
I'm gonna flip them over right here, and we'll do them all back at the end.
Lean has provided this from us, this is a revised estimate of Dunbarton revenues.
I don't wanna be the bearer of bad news, but I will be setting the tax rate next week.
It's gonna go down?
Don't think so, but, Michelle Clark from the Department of Revenue contacted me, and her job is to go over the MS 434, which is the revised estimated revenues that the board and I talked about briefly last week. She gave me the updated, numbers for, I'm just gonna,
I see them in there, they're typed in the new.
right, she needed to allocate numbers or amounts in certain lines that were account coded by the Department of Revenue, so, fire department apparatus, she reduced that slightly and moved the money from the fire department account into a different line. The big changes that are on their rooms and meals, were increased to $144,332, which is $14,000 more than what was budgeted. Another increase is the highway block grant, went from, the 90, let's see, what do we have for highway block? Highway block was 90, came in at 98,501, which is an increase of $8,501.
What page are you on?
First page. I'm
very
just going
bottom.
over the
Okay, I
the
see
big
that.
changes. So the big changes were the rooms and meals, highway block grant, and then flood control increased 8,345, so that went from 69 to 77,345. So overall, the increase that she'll be using for revenue for the town is increased 24,525. So our new revenue number that she'll be using to set the tax rate is 1,330,966.
Sure, yeah, that's not bad news, it's good news.
It's good news, but that may not cover all the
Right.
increases from the town meeting, so that will be coming back.
Lee, we had, under milfoil,
Mhm.
we had expected revenues of 19 and it only come in at 9,500.
Correct, cause it's just been shifted to a different account, different line, so you can see I crossed out 13 and I moved it up to 3409, which was a PD, police department vehicle. She wanted it listed under other charges in that
Oh.
category. So that's what she does, is she'll review the input of where these, numbers come from and tweak them a little bit so that they're more accurate.
Numbers don't change, but just the accounting part.
The
is.
counting part is, yep. And of course, in the beginning, a lot of these numbers are, I will reach out to them as to whether they're put in a certain category. So at the beginning of the year, we might decide they belong here, but then over the course of the year, they'll adjust them to a different category.
Okay.
It's just a counting location,
Okay, so you'll be bringing that in this week then?
yeah.
Okay. All right, I also have, if you recall, last week, next item, there was a discussion on the, job description for the, administrative assistant for the planning, building, and zoning department. We have the old one, the old one and the new one, and you can see the differences with the, I thought they basically cleaned it up a little bit, they took out secretarial and they made it administrative, because he does administrative support rather than secretarial support. And I think they cleaned it up. I thought they had some, I think Allison gave some good recommendations for that, yeah.
We're gonna make sure they can take minutes.
Yeah, it's in there, it's in there. That's secretarial.
No, I looked at the changes and I thought they looked good, the changes.
But I made one change here too, but then I told her, we don't use typewriter for minutes.
We do in the office, but not for that position,
Right.
regularly anyway.
So
Paul, by the way, you didn't have a chance to sign that one.
And the actual job description was, you saw this already.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so we're almost ready to move out and start
Mhm.
putting it in the paper.
I'll put it in the paper tomorrow, if you guys give me the blessing.
Sure.
I just need to make sure that the job description was, as clear as possible and up to date.
I'll put it with his file.
Yep. All right, I also have, citizens complaint, about a complaint against the police department. I have talked to the person via telephone, and I'm gonna follow up with the chief of police as far as, the complaint. It's a neighbor dispute. Did you all get a chance to see that?
I did.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So I took that for action today. I'm almost done with the investigation. There's a criminal investigation going on with that, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of the second complaint.
Oh, there was two?
Yes, it started off, the initial, there was a criminal complaint involved in that. In fact, criminal charges being brought to one party involved in this. And so it's a neighbor dispute, and the thing is, there's evidence on one side, no evidence on the other side. I need to do a little more investigating before I can make a recommendation, and I'll get back, I told her I'd get back to her one way or the other after I talk with the chief.
How much you want me to put down, just.
I left the names off and the address off, just say there was a neighbor complaint brought against the police department of Dunbarton. Between two neighbors. And I'm investigating that. We can leave the names off for now. All right, so we talked about that. We talked about this. Okay, anything else, general town business? I think, not on the agenda, but the thing is, we're still investigating the gutters. I think I think you made as an observation, it's the end of the season, everyone's busy. Getting people out here for quotes has been difficult to respond to quotes. I'm gonna throw out another name in the hat and see if we can get someone else here for quotes. So that
Okay.
before we repair it, no sense putting a brand new door there, or if you don't have gutters to protect it. And then the other thing was, the painters on this building, the back, on the cemetery side, the wood is almost in contact with the ground where the grass grows up. He suggested, that we basically remove the grass and substitute it with gravel. Stone. Crushed stone. And,
Yep, I did meet with him this
we
week
saw,
as
he
well.
said, did he say something to you?
He said the same thing to me, and I also talked to him about the plinth blocks on the corner of the
Right.
library, town hall. And, he is gonna, the few that are loose, ready to fall off, he's gonna re-fasten them, caulk them,
Okay.
and, put them in place until we do some further work with that building next year, so we don't lose the wood and have further rot go on, and he's gonna not charge us for that, he's just doing it.
Okay.
Tell him we accept his price.
Yeah. The thing is,
I agree with his assessment around the stone.
yeah, that technically is in that side of the building is in the cemetery side too. So Bob, you had an interesting
Well,
suggestion.
I'm wondering if we can have one of the cemetery trustees here and do a proposal, since we're in the cemetery side, split the cost, cause they don't seem to use their budget money anyways. They try to encumber it, so why don't we get them to encumber some to do some of that?
That's a great idea.
Invite the cemetery trustees to a
To
meeting.
the next,
Yeah,
to the next
next meeting.
selectmen's meeting.
And I have a comment about that. May I speak?
Go ahead.
To public
No,
opinion.
you can, why don't you-
It's just that, anything to do with inside, because I was a cemetery trustee at one time,
Right.
anything to do with digging, you're not allowed to. So it may be a complication trying to remove the grass to put gravel.
I don't think up against the building anybody's buried.
You put some flowers in
Maybe just
the
under the corner or something.
We'll address that, that's a good,
You may
good,
be able to
but you brought it up.
cut the grass all the way down and put the no-grow stuff, and then put the rock on top. You can't dig
You
down,
don't
but
wanna
you can
do
put
that.
into it.
I gotta tell you, grass grows pretty good if you have room underneath.
Yeah, well, anyway,
We'll
just
talk
get
about
them
it.
in here, but I think, yeah, we can ask them to come to one of the next
Yeah,
meetings.
we're not talking about a wide strip anyhow.
No, it's just
A couple feet.
even a foot.
Yeah.
No, it's gotta reach the drip line.
Drip line, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a good question for the cemetery trustees to look into that, if they could?
Oh,
They just said
that's what they just said.
we decided on that, we're gonna invite
They're
them to
gonna
the
come
next
into
meeting.
the next
Yeah,
meeting.
we'll
maybe
discuss
to
it with
look
the-
into, see if they could dig that.
Yes, we'll pass it on to them.
Oh.
We're gonna
so
give-
Before, they
Yeah,
meet with
before the
them?
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's, I think that was inferred, but we're gonna cement it now. Cement it, that was bad. That wasn't too bad. Okay, Woody,
Yes.
do we have any applicants for the new help wanted for the replacing?
We do, but I don't think they're anything CDO.
Okay. Well, we'll keep trying. And I think I still gotta meet with you, and I think when I go down there, I'm taking pictures, by the way, too. What I intend to do with pictures is, as we go forth and propose budgets for next year, as we go to the voters, I can talk till I turn blue, I can talk fast till I turn blue, but a picture can demonstrate what we need to do. And I think any of our maintenance projects, I'm gonna try to make pictures, so as we present why we need money, we can show the town's voters what we're trying to fix. And I think that's,
Do you think that'll stop you from turning blue?
no, because I'm not gonna talk. Okay, I'm gonna
I think John has something for business tonight.
yeah, business, John, go ahead.
On a grant for the breathing apparatus,
Yes,
I wanna move ahead with that, make the purchase. Got some different quotes. Problem we had was that we don't have enough money to buy what we needed to buy. That prices had gone up from the time we did the proposal, and it's pretty hard for the feds to, you can't really not change your project or back out of there or ask for money, so. A vendor that we've done business with for 20 years, we got our current apparatus, breathing apparatus with him. The two batches of packs we get now, we bought on grants, came from him, he maintains that stuff. So obviously he wants to do business with us. So he's agreed to make the number work.
Okay.
He's given us $24,000 worth of free cylinders, free training, free fit testing. We have to test the mask to our face to make sure they fit properly. He's given us a free device called the Pack Tracker.
They must want our business.
Yeah, and they've always been good to us. They've, you know, town's done business with them since I've been fire chief, almost 20 years. Anyways, the grant was for $138,000, $139,000. His bid is $139.40. Another bid from American Fire. There's no vendors in New Hampshire, they're out of state, but he was $181. And the company, if you can buy direct from Scott, is $201.
$282. That sounds like list price.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But there's basically two manufacturers of breathing apparatus. Meet all the standards, is Scott and MSA are the two biggest companies. Majority, almost all of our neighbors have Scots, we've had Scots, so it's it's basically the same pack, just new technology, so training will be less of an impact, bottles are interchangeable. About the entire, for the 20,000 in a compact, only 2 don't have Scott brand, so, we want to stick with Scott. They didn't get a price on an MSA, because just don't like their product and their service. I don't even know where they're serviced. The salesman called me from Vermont, because he knew we got the bid, we got the grant. So, this company is right over the town line in Tewksbury. They pick our packs up for us, services. So, it just makes sense, I think, to go with him.
Okay.
John,
So-
so those masks are all fitted to the individual person?
Yeah, that's actually an FDA standard. You're supposed to do a fit test, so you don't get your own personal mask. So when you put one on, because there are 3 different sizes,
Oh,
you
okay.
take the proper mask.
Oh, I see.
And then if something ever happened to you, you can say, well, I was fit tested, you can grimace, you inhale for so many minutes. There's a test process to make sure that mask isn't leaking, the seal's good, you're not getting air anywhere, or if you got facial hair,
Yeah.
that, not allowed anyways to wear.
When I was at a service, they made us test with CS gas or tear gas to make sure it worked.
Yeah. They should try.
How many masks will we have after that?
Well, it's 20. Yeah. And the other thing is this company will take care of, we'll take our old packs, which could be a problem disposing of them. They can't be used in the United States because they don't meet the current standard. So what they do is these companies ship them to third world country, probably donate them, it's more good in the business.
As you said, you were meeting, you're gonna meet what we applied for in the grant?
Yeah.
So there's no extra money involved?
It's $40 over.
I think we.
Under, isn't it? $40 under.
Over.
Oh, $13.80, $90, $40, $60. Yeah, $60 under.
$60 under our
Yeah.
grant total.
So,
With your recommendation, I think we need to vote on that one? I think it's,
yeah, I don't think, I just wanted to.
we just gotta write the check.
Yeah, once, we get the invoice, the government will release the money.
Okay,
It's deposited directly into town's general fund,
okay, well.
and then town has to cut the check.
Yep.
In 6619, that's coming out of our town tool account, 5-pound tool account.
Yeah.
Because that's our percentage, the
Right.
5% for the grant. So, we have to pay 132, 381 was the town share, was the federal share, and the town share is 6,619, that makes the 139.
Well, this company appears to, the fact they want our business and they're very reasonable of a bid, I think it's a win-win for Dunbarton.
Yeah, so it's, like I said, the only way you could make it work with the spare balls, which was part of our grant, was for them, they'll just throw them in, get the business. And that track finder, that's a $2,500 item. They are gonna bill us for the, needs a charger, truck charger, and some other hardware. But, yeah, so we can move that ahead before
Okay.
we get another price increase or.
Appreciate you keeping us in the loop on it.
Yeah.
So
That's a great
so at some
Yeah.
point you'll see that bill,
Okay,
but it takes a while to get them ordered
yeah.
and in
Well,
service.
Woody can tell you how we scrutinize bills around here.
And, update on the cruiser, we did put the new cruiser in service Monday night. The
Okay.
old one, I'm gonna send to the state auction.
Okay.
She's got some other reason to get rid, another way to get rid of it, you know.
Maybe you can get more money than we got for our copy
Yeah.
machine.
Last time we sent the Element, we did all right, but somebody suggested Craigslist, but trouble with Craigslist, you have to meet with people, they don't show up, it's time effective, and then, you know, the car's got a lot of rust on it, so, you know, you gotta set a price, so I think the best route is to ship it to
Yeah.
the state auction, that's coming up, like in 2 weeks.
In fact, they just sent us some, information on how to, deal with vehicles coming forward.
Right, title and
Yeah,
all that.
and it was just updated maybe a week ago.
Was it?
Yep.
Okay, 'cause I
Yeah.
got one a month ago.
Yeah, oh, it's been a couple weeks now.
So you gotta, we'll have to get the title.
And, how about your new truck, you gonna paint that red?
I found out that auto body shops don't paint vehicles.
Really?
I contacted a couple, larger shops and they said, we don't paint cars. I go, we don't paint cars. All they do is repair.
So what do you have to send it to Mako?
You have to find, you have to find a small shop. These big shops are production work. The guys fix the damage, got one guy that paints the part, and then, you know, I'm sure it's all insurance, money driven. If you bring a car in, full car, they won't paint a complete car for you.
Really?
So, I contacted Big Shop in Manchester, Key in Concord, actually the manager lives in Dunbarton, so I figured he might help us out a little bit. And the only thing he did, he suggested another, a small shop, actually the guy called me, 2 days ago, but I haven't heard back from him. Today I took it to a shop in Bow, just to get a price to see, you know, I have no idea what's gonna cost to paint that car. I've heard estimates from 2,000 to 5,000. So this guy in Bow, he came highly recommended, actually there was 2 state police cruisers in his shop when I was in there today. Said he'd give me a price by supper time, but I haven't seen it, so we'll see what route. If I don't have enough money this year to budget it, in my budget, I'll just, you know, we'll put some stickers on it and run it till.
Now, are you using it now with the stickers that are on it, or?
There's not, well, we removed all the police
Right.
ones, but the door stickers that we use, I ordered them today from, Shop in Bow, so they'll be ready Monday, so if we don't get it painted, we'll just have the decals around like it is, there's no, you know, there's no police markings on it. It's-
Right.
It's not the right color, but blue is blue.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm curious to see what these prices come back. You know, it's possible I could get it done this year, when I got in my budget, if it's
Okay.
fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
Cause I'd like to get it painted, cause, you know, we're gonna hold on that for quite a while and.
So we'll know what
Yeah,
happens if
different
half of it's painted.
Right. Actually, they're recommending not,
Yeah.
if I go red and the spot pass black, not do the roof, which can save some money, cause they said you go black to the bottom, top of the doors, you never know that roof is not black because how dark the blue is,
Yeah.
and that's a cost saving if they don't have to do
see.
anything with the roof. And then, like the door jams, I don't care if the door jams aren't
You know,
painted,
Bob is suggesting Rust-Oleum spray paint.
there you go. I've done cars like, but if you do just the strip and all the door jams, you don't need to do the whole car, so. It might come in pretty reasonable,
Okay,
but
well, we'll hope for you, that's
Yeah.
good.
if not.
very proud of it.
Okay, Lean, any general town business that we missing?
Just one more, the, anniversary quote display case.
Yeah,
Um,
all right. You shared the quagmire that turned out to be, please express what has happened.
This has been an ongoing request from Allison to try to preserve the quilt that so many people got involved with. So it's been on her, list of things to try to, get taken care of. She got the quote from a local carpenter, and she kept, when he came and approached her, he said he'd gotten material listing cost, shouldn't cost more than $1,200 to $1,500, and he would price out the plexiglass or the glass, trying to determine whether it was too heavy or if he could work one or the other. And so with that understanding, she said, that sounds good, give me something in writing. Well, that never happened, and he approached the office this week and said, well, it's all built and it's almost ready to be installed, so I need some help putting it up. So at this point, there was no authorization to ask him to build it. It was repeatedly, we need a quote in writing, but at this point, the case has been designed and built. And where we have some funding in our building and maintenance, I'd like to, again, address it and possibly get permission of the board to move forward with it.
I think the gentleman who basically volunteered to do that, who thought he had a contract with us, did not. And I happened to been here when Allison left the message. She was asking for a quote so it could go to the selectmen for approval. This gentleman did the knee-jerk reaction and started working on it before any contract or any approval or anything like that. So I feel bad for the gentleman, but we're under no obligation to accept it. So it's a quagmire in the sense that it is a Dunbarton resident who's building it.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, my only concern was I wanted to make sure that the glass was a UV protective glass, cause
it's not.
they were concerned about the fading, and they said that it can't be done.
Correct.
Correct.
So,
We called two local glass companies. They said the plastic does not provide UV protection.
which I knew.
And then the glass was a consideration, but the glass, it increases the weight of that. If it's gonna be secured to the wall, it's gonna be really, really heavy, and it's heavy as it is. It probably needs 3 or 4 people to hang it. So the only other option with the plastic is to place the quilt towards the back, away from the window.
As you suggested, keep it out of the sunlight, remember? But that was for the one in the photos.
Yeah, that was just
Yeah.
a photo.
Yeah. Help me out here, gentlemen.
Don't we have other things that we could spend $1,200 on that we really need?
Oh, I haven't even suggested we approve it, sir.
I mean, Jesus.
In fact, there's no reason why, look at walls, it's in this building, it could be displayed in another building, it could be displayed in the library, for example.
Yeah, and there's walls that don't face the sun, and you can hang them higher. You can hang it a little higher, and it would eliminate.
I mean, it's really beautiful,
We
no
actually-
doubt,
we
a lot
all-
of nice work in it, but just,
Mike and I looked at a couple of places in the library where it would fit in, but, that's another venue, I guess, of putting it out.
Right, it's still within, town can still appreciate it, and it's a different, location. Dave, your comments?
Well, I think it should be protected.
well, I'll tell you what, I have an old quilt in my home, and
I'll
it's,
give you a chance just a second, I was just in the middle of talking.
sorry,
My thought is it should be protected. The case sounds a little steep to me, but, I think the vendor you guys spoke about does, high quality work. I was more concerned about the light because I don't think you're gonna protect it that well without doing something with the UV.
That's why I was thinking different location. Library would be appropriate place.
But regardless if it's in the library, I think it should be protected either way.
Oh, out of the direct sunlight, yeah.
No, I don't.
No,
think
but
that's done.
in the case.
In a case, yeah, just to
Agreed.
keep it from
now
spoiling,
can I
there's a lot
speak?
of work in
Oh,
there.
sorry.
So, my thought is it should be protected. I don't like the fact that it was built before the town had a chance to make a decision on it. but that bridge has already been crossed and the water's gone over it, so.
No, I still think we require a written estimate of specifications and everything else from the gentleman. Now, we're not gonna accept it without, I would not recommend accepting anything without hearing what we asked for, a quote, of specifications. Plexiglass, how thick, what kind of wood on the outside? I mean, I don't want maple walnut on the outside, it could be just plain pine. It doesn't have to be extravagant.
No, but it's all built, I don't know what
Ah.
he used, I don't know what he used.
Right, but we should have at least the specifications before we just accept it.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna let Leo, he's.
Yeah, otherwise I can sell you things tomorrow. So I have an old quilt back home.
Yeah.
Okay, and it hangs in my great room. It's been there for probably 10 years, but this thing the quilt was made in about 1880. All right, very
Okay.
intricate, and it looks brand new because I don't put it out in the sun at light at all. It's in a corner where there's no light. It's not dirty, it's not faded, nothing.
Well, that's what me and Bob were agreeing to, that
So-
location change, keep it out of the sunlight.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that so that way you can realize that you don't really need to put it in a case, you know? Because like I said, this is 1880 was done.
You know, and even if you raise it 18 inches at the library, it brings it up above any chairs or anything. And you're gonna look up anyways, because it's a large quilt. You're gonna look up at it somewhere, so if you look up a little higher, I mean, it's not a big deal, but, because they can make those cases for this out of aluminum for a lot less money. And you might be able to get the glass, but then you gotta handle it, you know?
But why don't we get a quote of aluminum just to see what the numbers run?
Yeah, you go to Portland Glass or one of those places,
Aluminum frame with plexiglass.
Oh.
I was just.
Beckett's.
I think that, you know,
Beckett's
I
glass.
think that in our town buildings, a wood case would be nicer, but I don't mind getting a price on one just to see how close they are.
well, you know, cause you can get aluminum that's brown. I mean, it'd be nice to have it look authentic and have a nice frame around it, but I don't know, I hate spending somebody else's money, you know, for a fancy protection for the quilt. And
Aluminum's kind
again,
of,
the carpenter that did it's a very good carpenter, but again, you charge for your time.
Yeah,
okay, so I recommend, I'm gonna get a consensus here, not a vote, but we table this until we get some further information.
Yeah, we'll see what he actually built.
Yep.
And then, we'll price an aluminum one to see
Yeah.
what the numbers come back on, just so we'll have an idea.
And aluminum goes with 2015, wood, I mean, aluminum is the thing of the age today, aluminum.
So is plastic.
So is plastic, yeah. But if you drive a Chevy, you have a steel bed.
okay, good, thank you.
I'm gonna go out there and say I like wood.
All right, any other town business?
That's all I have.
Okay, I'm gonna open up the public comment now. I'm gonna start with Chief on this side. Anything else, Chief? Public comment?
On that book, you put it in the library, kids are gonna be grabbing it. Unless it's high enough for a kid that can't rub his hands against it. So
Okay.
that's my only comment on that, because kids will be kids and
Well,
they'll be touching it.
I figured we wanna avoid it out right next to the restroom, because it'd be a towel.
Exactly.
It is recorded,
It is recorded.
My 2 cents.
I said avoid it. Okay, Woody, go ahead.
Just one thing, the roof has been done at the transfer.
Good.
Oh, nice.
Are you satisfied?
I don't know nothing about roofs, so I think we should have our building inspector come take a
yes.
peek at
I
it
could
before we pay the bill.
As he should, as he should be doing for any,
We don't typically inspect roofs, but I would do it for Woody,
No, but the thing is, one thing we decided, that any work to be done in any building,
for a town building.
in town building,
Yep.
they get a no-cost building permit, so you get situational awareness.
Whoops.
That's okay, well, I was there like last week, but I'll go.
No,
And the roof wasn't up. The
But the
roof
thing is,
wasn't up.
I'll give you an example, he did
I need
some,
we need the drone so I can see.
also showing the electrical work. Hey, did you expect to do electrical work down there?
Whoops.
I saw it from a distance, but no, I
Okay.
didn't,
Woody,
but I will look at
will you
it.
share some of your improvements down there? One of the things we wanna stipulate that, even though we get work done, I think is, any town building, we should be requiring no-cost permits.
Right.
It gives you
We
where.
talked about that, like.
Yeah, it gives you a second set of eyes, so you can see what's going on.
Right.
That was the issue.
I
Yeah,
guess at
no.
the building permit,
I've seen some bad roofs though, just,
Okay.
so I don't mind looking at a roof.
at the point where we're accepting a bid would be the time that I'm reminded that, make sure they get a
No cost.
no-cost permit. And
Yeah, so I'll,
Okay,
I could,
yeah.
within the next week or so, I'll get that.
Let me see. That's all, that's good. Okay, now it's back to you. Anything else, Woody? Okay.
For that farm,
Yes.
should I, like what Ken did, should I make a visit or do some homework before I make a visit, or?
You can do a little homework, but as you shared with me earlier, that you have an empty file. I have no problem with you going down there.
Well, I'm
making
gonna go through rip through the file.
Right. If you make a courtesy visit and look at stuff that was installed without permitting, that
Right,
would be
that's what I'm
helpful.
guessing was gonna happen.
Right, but I don't wanna guess, I wanna.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that would be warranted, gentlemen, what do you think?
Oh, yeah,
As a fact-finding mission, part of the fact-finding mission.
I would rather spend the time in finding out if those structures meet an agricultural
So-
use.
Do some legwork beforehand.
That's what I
Okay.
mean, we know
I'm
from
just-
the pictures what the
how we wanna
structures are
proceed.
down there, and
Yeah.
the
I
other
was
thing
involved a
is,
little bit down there.
huh,
I was involved in that a little bit.
you were?
Steve has an extensive file on that property.
But it's all website related, it's all information that is, you have it there?
I don't have,
The permit that was on, the permit folder?
They never
well, the
pulled.
folder I can grab it, but
Yeah.
We did go down, Steve and I have been down there.
you have it now.
But did they have buildings then?
This was a previous building
No.
inspector.
Yes.
Okay.
Steve
So he said he's
researched
been
the
down there.
buildings, those who buildings.
Yeah,
He researched with the Department of Agriculture, other towns around, they are not required of a building permit. They are temporary buildings, there is no concrete involved in footings, they sit in gravel. They fall underneath the agricultural building code. The International Building Code says those buildings do not need to be permitted.
what about for
Steve did
electrical?
all this research.
They don't have a,
He had Mrs. Stone come in the office,
Yeah,
discuss stuff that was going down there with Mrs. Stone. I was here once when she was in, they were talking. So Steve has done some research there. Like some of those people indicated that there is some federal money involved there. The US Department of Agriculture Secretary has been on site down there. So there is a political side to that, but, you know, like I said, needed permits. We have no idea how that well got put in. Who ran electricity to that well? Never came in here, we never knew it had happened, you know?
I think that's kind of common with some well companies will just come in and put a well in if you ask them.
Yeah,
I
So-
don't think.
But they're supposed to do a filing at the state too. The well water
Maybe,
board.
maybe they did the filing at the state, but just not at the
So
town, cause
that
some
could be-
towns don't
That could be
require it.
researched to see if it's
Yeah,
by the property.
but I remember one other property when Ray Samard put one of them temporary shelters, or supposedly temporary shelters up, it was a pretty substantial one, and I remember there was nothing required at that time of him. I don't know if anything has changed since
Well,
then.
he actually had concrete in his, which made it a little bit different.
Oh, yeah, like a
And
pad, yeah,
The pad, he had some permanent, little wooden 4-foot walls
yeah.
that started. These are direct burial into the ground. Steve had all the literature from the company that they bought from, their home buildings. So you can go on the agricultural sites and they explain those buildings.
That's why I wanted to make sure these people didn't leave here tonight thinking that we were gonna jump down these people's throat, because between the logging and those buildings and the agricultural use on that property, I think maybe most of it may be able to still be done under current use as well, and that's why I didn't want them to leave here thinking we were gonna jump down these people's throats without researching it
absolutely.
properly.
But there, you know, there's the other issues, with, you know, sanitary issues and, you know, housekeeping issues and,
Yeah,
There are other issues to be addressed.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the business side of it.
the other
You know,
thing,
Steve
Mike,
looked into that,
Yeah,
and
the land
zoning and.
the business end of it, and the other thing that, I'm not even sure how many porta potties, you know, you go to these construction sites,
Right.
some are very large and some are very small, sometimes there's 3 porta potties, sometimes there's 2, I'm not sure how that's determined, but maybe we find that out as well.
And how
because-
often they're empty is determined by who actually is renting it.
Yeah, but I'm not sure, I don't mean who's renting it, how many people can you have on the
Right,
property
what's the,
without having more than one?
the DES would probably know.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure who you did.
Those are some of the questions we're gonna have to need
Yeah,
addressed.
so I could, that's like a simple
Yeah,
phone call.
so you have a few things on your plate.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The thing is, what we don't wanna do is, jump off the deep end.
No, just, okay, what's this, what's,
Right, the thing is, we have to deal in facts, and, as I said, Chief just brought us some
No.
revealing information to us, and,
that's good, that's real
Yeah.
good.
And like, do you realize he was the building inspector for a period of time?
He made sure I could do it.
Okay,
I trained
absolutely.
I owe it all to him.
alright, so I guess any help that.
No, that's, I do
work together and-
refer to John, like every week and a half or 2 weeks.
I know Steve had mentioned before he left that they had come in and inquired about doing a farm stand there. And one of the issues was that they didn't have road frontage
Oh, that's right, yeah.
on a class 5 road.
Yeah.
So maybe now, they're gonna have frontage on state highway, that they'll be coming in to get a.
Oh, they were gonna try and do it on Story Road, not on the
Right,
main
That's
road,
class 6.
but now
Yep,
they've
and
logged
he
there, so
told
they
them
know.
that they weren't able to do it. I can't speak for Steve, but
Yeah,
they didn't do it. And I think one of the issues was frontage
okay.
on a class 5 road. So, but now, if they cut this lot, I'm sure they might be intention to put a farm stand there.
Can I ask you a question then? If they're accessing that property to do all of the work that they're doing right now through the class 6 road, isn't that against our policy that they would have had to access the whole project of the agricultural use through class 5?
No.
Class
You can
6 has
access
to
your
go
land on a
through,
class 6 road.
Yeah, but you can
Selectmen.
access your property to go to, nobody can tell you can't go to your property through your class 6 road.
Right. If they came in and said, we wanna open up a business down there, then that's a whole different ballgame.
Then we'd have to have them upgrade the road or
Yeah.
whatever else, but
But
now they're
they've
gonna
been
go right
act-
off the main highway
They've been
probably.
accessing their property on that class 6 road.
It goes to your point you said earlier, they may be well within their rights.
Yeah, and that's why I wanna make sure these people understood before they left that there's only so much we can do. If you get into those agricultural uses, they're pretty extensive in what they allow, they're pretty,
They are. And
Pretty
I know
lenient.
Steve had done some legwork, so I don't know where that paperwork is, but
It's in the file, there's a file with, a lot of it is just literature about the
I know he
business.
printed anything that was online.
It's the one in that top cabinet.
that he
That was sitting on
printed,
top of the
newspaper
open drawer,
articles,
that's the
Because
folder.
people in town were concerned about what's gonna happen down there. You know, you go to that website about the whole project, that.
I don't think it hurts to have a building inspector go down and just document what he's looking at.
Yeah.
And also being the health officer,
Yeah,
just to make sure that that they're not using it for housing and, you know, I mean, Ken pointed out some of the state agencies. And they'll be able to either
Guide us or-
verify that things are okay, or they may point out something so that you may have additional information when you're reaching out to the attorney that you don't have, you know?
Right. So,
One
Mike,
issue we
you
ran
said,
into when we went down there is no one spoke English. Steve and I went down there, and there were some workers there, and they wouldn't speak to us in
Well,
English, so.
well, I think it was stated that even when Ken went there, nobody approached him.
and he was there for over half an hour.
They don't know how to approach you
Right.
or,
The Somalian people, I dealt with them a lot in Concord. The females won't even, if you're anybody of authority, they're basically afraid of you. They won't even talk to you. They're usually, well, we ran in Concord, the children can speak English. A lot of the males won't speak English to you. But the day Steve and I went down there were half a dozen people there. Not one of them, at least, would speak English to us. So we tried to ask a few questions and did the best we could, but
you know, I just went to a roof job and it was all Philippines and I had to talk to a young little girl, who's the only one that knew English.
well, the thing is, could Nancy Stone, the owners of the property, be a conduit to finding someone who can speak on behalf of the property?
they
Well,
should
there are
be.
two people on the emails, Ian is one of the guy's name, and the
Andrea.
girl Andrea or
Caldwell, yeah.
Caldwell, they're in,
I would maybe coordinate with them, tell me you'd like to go down there. and then-
Okay,
In other words, give them the courtesy.
they get their
Right.
permission.
When they first went there, Jim Stone was alive. I went down to the fire department and gave them water, so they could have water, cause there was a pond there, with a pump and it dried up. So as a courtesy, I went down there probably 7 or 8 times and filled their water tanks up for them. And at that time, there was a contact, it might have been this guy, that sounds familiar.
Ian
But
is
there's
one of
somebody
the
out of
names.
Manchester, out of, some agency in Manchester that was overseeing the project at that point.
Yeah.
So, you know, you might be able to contact them, but they were kind of the ones in control at the time.
Yeah, I think those are the people you may wanna just coordinate first before you go down, to give a courtesy.
But since then, I mean, at that point, it was just gardens, there were no greenhouses or.
See, that's the difference, back then when they went out there was, and that's what I was under the assumption is
And
that.
the reason Steve and I went down is because one of the neighbors said they were building a barn. Because they did have plywood fronts on, I don't know, if all of them, but some of them.
Yeah, the picture showed it.
They do now.
They've got one that was facing the road, a lot of them are perpendicular, this one was face the road, so that's why Steve and I ended up down there, to see if they were building this wooden structure. It was the plywood they could see. And, you know, that's when it was under construction, so we could see how it sat in the ground. Then we came back and Steve did some research on those hoop structures. And, you know, I don't wanna say anything else about that with Ken Swayze, but he was involved, in it at a few different points, so.
Okay.
I obviously don't wanna speak for him, but I think he knows more about it.
All right, again, we need to be educated so we can make the right decision here.
Yes. And the problem is now they've cut the trees and all these people can see it. I was notified by a few people in town when they started cutting the trees that, I don't wanna say who this group is, but the social media groups, I guess you could say,
Okay.
who was spreading rumors around town that they were just clearing the land to build workforce housing. That's what was going on then. And I told them, no, they've never approached the town, that they're in there logging, because one of those women that were here before, or came here tonight, the one that bought Hammond's old house down at the bottom of the hill, she was in because she heard they were gonna cut trees, you know, to expand the fields. I think that's what they wanna do, make more open land to grow more vegetables. That's why they're logging.
Yep.
So,
And
Steve made a few suggestions to her, you know, what they might do to protect themselves from what's gonna happen. So, I don't, obviously they didn't do that.
But as Dave said, logging is, there's
Exactly.
no illegal
So you only,
logging.
it's right to your
I mean,
land.
logging in itself is invasive, and most people, when they get somebody that either clear cuts or even selective cuts heavily next to their property, they feel, you know, they feel that same type of feeling these people have, but there's little to nothing you can do, because people have that right to do to their
Right, and
property.
like you suggested, get Brian now, the ranger in there,
Yeah.
check the job site, make sure they're within,
And he comes in regularly and
Yeah,
checks
he's-
with us, so we can call him and
yeah,
at least check their wetland crossings and their buffers and.
exactly. But if they're cutting land to make more fields,
Yeah, they can
you
do
know, they're
that.
gonna clear cut some trees.
And you know, that was a lot of their concern, was that the trees are gone and this is all open, but I wanted to make sure they left knowing that that's probably their right to do that with their property. So,
'Cause the day that she came in, she was in, you know, months ago, that she had learned then that they were gonna expand the fields, they wanna make more fields and grow more vegetables. So,
And as you said, there's been a lot of rumors about the housing, but
Exactly.
that's what they are, rumors. Nothing has reached that department as far as building permits.
that's why I told you, no one has come to the town with any kind of a plan for
Yeah.
any kind of a structure down there.
I think the
I think
concerns
they're
of the
a little-
abutters is because there's electricity without a permit, there's
Yeah.
a pump without a permit. So how far will they take this next without a permit?
Yes.
I can,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, Leo, you were.
I guess I don't think rumor is the word, but their intent is to build.
It's
Ian
not in their-
himself
It's
told
on
me
their
that.
website, it is intent.
Yeah.
Ian himself told me that. Their
Yeah.
intent is to build housing there,
Right.
4 to 6 family units.
Right, but before they put the foundation, like they see, they
Yeah.
buy the
Right.
building department.
Yeah.
Right, no, I understand. I'm just saying that's their intent.
But like Ken said, on a major highway, we have 4 units available to them on that lot, as long as they have, 11 acres. So that's available that they can do. So a lot of these things, I know that I've been on different boards before, and wells have been put in this town, and at the time I had heard that we were one of the only towns that the town requires a well permit, because it's normally regulated at the state level, so a lot of times wells come in.
Wells get put in without permit, anybody ever stepping into this office, it happens every day.
Yeah,
of
so
the
it
week.
happens all the time, so the well isn't a huge deal,
Right.
and we're one of the few towns that, they will bring power into this town without having a sign off from a building permit, and that's common in this town as well. So the power in the well don't surprise me on that lot at all, because it's happened around this town all over.
Right. Well, Eversource won't make a connection unless it's signed off by the building department.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I don't know where the power came from. If Eversource was involved, then the
Eversource
permit
is
would've
not always involved though.
been- Right, that's what I'm saying, if it was that's the only reason we do an inspection down there, or an
Yeah.
electrician came in full permit.
Like for
Eversource will
Unitil,
make a
it's not
connection.
required, just for another example, you know, so Unitil, somebody, they drop a Dunbarton panel
Yeah.
tomorrow if you ask them.
But Eversource won't.
Right.
Eversource requires a permit and an inspection before they energize that pipe, so that's why I don't believe Eversource was involved down there in this.
It's probably
electrical-
Unitil at that site you're thinking, or?
Mm-mm.
No, so how would they have gotten it?
Right, where'd the power come from? You know, that's, you got, where's the electricity from? Maybe there's electricity in the property
Generator.
Already?
that they tapped into, but Eversource would have required an inspection. So
Yeah.
it was never at that point. And some electricians, most electricians are pretty good about pulling electrical permits, because they don't wanna lose their license.
Right.
You know, the tradespeople, plumbers and electricians, they usually go by the book, because
Yeah.
their livelihood depends on their license. So, you know, unless they stole power down here from, somebody climbed the pole and tapped into to the wire, I
Look
don't
for copper
believe.
pennies.
Right, so that's why there's probably no permit in the office.
Okay.
For the electrical part of it. And like Dave said, wells are put in all the time.
I know that that was a
Town
common
law.
thing on the zoning board, we had people come in, that was wells, and how did it happen? Cause we have a permit process, most of the small towns don't on wells. It's controlled by the
So
state.
well, you know, but, like I said, there should be quite a bit of research on those buildings.
Mike, was that you next? Anything else? You got your.
No, like I said, I was gonna grab the folder, but that's
If
okay.
you stay
I'm gonna
long-
look through all the paperwork.
If you stay longer or comment longer, we'll pile some more stuff on.
No, I gotta get some homework.
Okay, Leo, it's to you now.
You know, the porta potty thing, maybe the company might know, what, I know it's like a number,
usually have a
like
name on them.
every 5 or every 8 people you're supposed to have a porta potty, the company might know that, even, you know?
Right, but the thing is, it's not the company's responsibility to put the number out
I'm
there.
not saying that, I'm saying you could look into it.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a source of information.
Yeah, there's a sign on the porta potty. I know a guy who owns Triangle Toilets. And
Yeah, you just ask them, I'm sure they must know.
But as health officer, that would
That's what
fall into
they
your
do.
purview.
That's what they do, you know?
As health officer.
yeah, 'cause,
We just had a wedding in my house, and we had 100 people, and we asked them how many porta potties should we have.
Excuse me?
We just had a wedding with 100 people at our house,
Yeah,
and we asked that question, how many?
and how many did they tell you, 1? Two?
yeah.
For that, so like I said, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah.
That's like,
But
that's
that's
like
for
the
one
day.
day.
That's for the day.
Yeah, right, that's another
Bob
thing,
wants to
that's
know how
for one
often
day.
it's required to thank you too.
That's a function, yeah.
But every day, you know, is one
But, so
day.
there's gotta be some.
Every day
standard.
is Monday. Okay, it's a new day.
Leo, anything else?
Yeah,
Clean
I
it
got
up
a
every
question.
All right, all right.
Well, I got 2 things, one you're not gonna like.
Made up this
One,
summer.
I'm just curious, I've been away, so I don't know, is that Stark Bridge ever put in, or?
Oh,
I'd say this week, next week,
It's
anytime now.
being cured, as I understand.
Oh, what do you mean it's being cured?
The
Well, Mitchie
concrete,
made it.
Ah, so it's not in place yet.
no.
But they've gotten some monies. Mitchie.
Cause last time I heard it was supposed to be in by the end of August.
No, there were a few delays. We had to go through an historical review and pay a lot of money for it to find out it has no historical value.
Nice.
they looked at it because of the rocks, I think, on the side, and somebody
Yeah, right.
called it in for historical, so we waited for that survey, and then we also had to wait a period of time, I think, for them to,
For the blending turtles.
Yeah,
yeah.
and so things work, basically, as Bob said, a check has been cut to them, deposit's been made, a significant deposit, from the beginning the casting process.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, they've casted, or they're very close
Oh,
to,
yeah, it's been cast.
yes, and it takes about 30 days to cure
Okay.
before they can move it on
So
site.
when is it gonna be?
I'd say between now and the end of November.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, even earlier.
No,
Well,
earlier than that.
Earlier, yeah. Oh, he's
Early-
giving it,
I'm giving you worst case scenario.
No, he's planning to get right to it.
You're probably closer.
Okay.
Matter of fact, you're probably not close enough, it's probably like January.
No, I think it'll be in before the snow falls.
Yeah.
And Leo, we held their check, and didn't forward it even after we cut it, until they were at a certain point in their process.
Yeah, cause what if that thing cracks while
That's
curing?
what takes a year.
So we held that check to
Oh,
make
really?
sure they had engineering done and whatnot.
I'm sure there's a liability issue with them.
Yeah, I mean, if it cracks while it's in the process of curing, cause it could.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
But these are
it's
people know how to do it.
Yeah, no, I understand, yeah, I'm just a whatever, okay. All right, and also, this part here, I heard about the meeting, I watched them, well, I didn't get to see the meeting because I went into non-public, but I was pretty disappointed with the outcome of that meeting. I'm speaking now from the mouth of a historical awareness committee member who goes to every meeting, works.
Mhm.
We had that member that we had issues with. You guys all decided to leave that person there, and that person in 2 years did not even pick up the phone. We have computers, they could have worked at home to help out, there's all kinds of things, because we post the minutes of these meetings pretty good, because the chair gets those minutes in right away, and they get posted. There's all kinds of things that could be done at home if you can't make it. That person does not belong on that board, on that committee. I have no idea what the story was that you were told or fed.
We weren't fed anything, I suggest you talk to Donna about that, this is done in closed door session.
I understand that.
And I think we came to an equitable arrangement.
I
that
don't
was fair
think you
to all.
did, it wasn't equitable, it was
Well,
just,
how
that
can
was
you
a
say,
one-way thing.
how can you say that without talking to Donna?
I did.
Well, you just told me you did it,
No, I didn't say I didn't talk to her.
okay?
I never said I didn't talk to her.
Understood. I think I was satisfied with the outcome. That person is not gonna be reappointed again.
Well, I understand, but you know what that tells me? It tells me I should just get my name on all these committees and things and then not do anything, and I'll get all the accolades and praise, just like everybody else that works it.
I don't think that was the case of this particular one. I think it was more of a personality issue between two individuals.
No, as I said, I'm a member. I haven't seen that person do one piece of work the whole time I was a member of that committee. Up until 2 years ago, that person hasn't even been to the meeting.
I
And
hear
guess
your
what?
concern.
That person wasn't at this week's meeting. Okay?
Mhm.
So, didn't do us any favors there.
I think we did, because we allowed you, the concern was you wanted to get from the chairman of the committee, she needed a voting, shall I say, a
Quorum.
quorum.
Yeah.
And we made arrangements to help her get a quorum.
Yeah, well, again, you bypassed the problem though,
There was a several other issues involved there, which we talked,
Yeah,
in,
well,
and,
sounds like I'm talking in the chicken coop right now.
I don't understand that term.
That's okay.
Well, I just wanna say for the record, Leo, when we did review that, we had some information, go back to the municipal association, how we should handle, whether we took somebody off a current term or on their following term. And it was stated to us that we should allow them to finish that term out and on the next term, because even any vote we had made would not have been for the current term, but it would have been for the following term unless they resign themselves.
Well, that's
So-
not the way I'd heard it.
And I'm just trying to tell you, this is the information, we did the research on it, and this is the background that we all had as a board to look at. And so, anything we did as selectmen would have been for the following term,
Yeah, so-
not for the current term.
So
So,
what's the recourse? I mean, as far as, that person still doesn't have to attend any meetings, which I understand is to our benefit. But my point, it's just the principle of all of this.
unless there was
There's a
something in
principle
your,
here.
unless there was something in your rules as a committee, there probably isn't any other recourse other than waiting till their term comes up from what we did as research.
And I also, when you select future committee members, you gotta make sure you vet your members appropriately in the entire committee, if you're gonna vet members.
But she vetted herself.
Well, that's the rumors we have. And
No,
so-
that's what happened.
Well, but the thing is, what you're doing is trying to pin, we're not gonna take responsibility for what happened in the last selectmen boards who appointed her.
I'm not putting responsibility on anybody here except for the outcome of that meeting.
I think, it was
Okay?
equitable.
I'm not I'm really disappointed with that.
Okay, so noted.
But I just wanted to make sure you knew, you know, there's some things, the reason we did that, because of what we're allowed to do as selectmen, and what you guys were allowed to do as a board when we did the research on it. Anything we would do would affect their following term, whether they were
Sure.
taken off or put on. There's not much else we could do from what the wording was on that.
Well, the way I'd heard it was that, it had never been done before.
That wasn't the case, cause I think that, you know, everything that comes before us, we look at it as,
Well, that's the way I heard it. Of course, I can't read the minutes because they're sealed, so,
Yeah.
you know, which I don't understand why either there, but seems like it's a special case. So, in any event, you understand how I feel.
I do, so I do note that, sir.
And that's all I got.
Oh my God, we were holding that list up, I was hoping for another one.
Nope, that's it.
Okay, I'll close the public's comment, I'll bring it back to the board, I'm gonna go to Selectmen first. Dave?
I already reviewed the things I have. The only thing that I would like to work on this coming week is, to work with SCORE, cause I think that kind of has gone flat again, and I see the steel there, and I'm either gonna try and come in on tomorrow and work with Lean on that and call the company direct and or Monday, but I'm gonna try and work on that between now and our next meeting.
Were they gonna meet with engineer again, was the last meeting, we said they would have to arrange for themselves to pay for the expenses on that?
They asked for their information, which I provided.
Okay.
And then, I did get the one response after I explained to the president, Paul, that there was steel in the parking lot, that there could be problems if we have an early snowstorm, which
Yeah.
we've had on Halloween in the past.
Yeah, that should not have been left there this many weeks. Bob, you said you were gonna look up in the hole, was there any more up
Yeah,
top?
we were, actually, Mike and I were up there last week.
Yeah,
There's some on the stage and I went and looked up above. Now, whether or not the stuff up above,
it's fastened.
it doesn't have to be fabricated,
Okay,
you know, I don't know
but
what.
there is still steel up there,
But someone mentioned that it was an old guy and a young guy,
right?
so, I mean, that might have been problematic at the time for the old guy and the young guy to try to get that from up top, I don't know.
I'm gonna try and come in and sit down with Lean, and we'll call them on an open line and try and get that process rolling again, cause
Okay.
I think it's stalled long enough now, and we need to be proactive.
We just gotta be vigilant that, thing is, the one thing they tried to do before is get the selectmen to commit to changes without engineering input.
I won't be commit tendering.
And, I think when Bob and I met with them, before, they were really pumping us to give them a blessing, and we wouldn't do it without an engineer, acknowledging it, correct?
Yeah, there was already a lessening of the amount of fasteners from the engineer, so they already have that paperwork.
Exactly, right.
We shouldn't have to do anything further than that.
No, and at this point, if they want to meet with the engineer again, Bob said the last meeting, it should be, on their, checkbook.
Yeah, if they wanna make any adjustments now, he's given them two processes
Yeah.
to use. They, how
They can come to us with
fabricate
a
it.
third one
So
at their
that's-
cost if they.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm on the same page, but I'd like to call and get it going.
Yeah, no,
Follow
I
up.
agreed, again, it's stuff, I think, it's inherited stuff,
Yeah.
that this won't go away. Okay, anything else, you good?
I'm good.
Bob, to you?
No, that's okay, I'm all set.
Okay, Lean, to you?
I'm all set.
Corin, anything else, do you have other minutes that you need, other information you need?
No, I know.
Okay, I just wanna say, the minutes last week, I thought they were very well written, thank you.
They caught a lot of my mistakes.
No, but the one that needed no corrections at all.
Oh, the non-public,
Again, I
yes.
just wanna say, very good, thank you. Okay, I'm waiting, next meeting will be next week, and, I don't think we have any non-publics.
Do you have anything else, Woody, for the board?
Oh, I do have something.
Make it quick, before I hear a motion.
The week of, is it the 11th through the 18th? I'm gonna be gone.
October?
Yeah, October. It's the third week. I'm just going down to Maryland, so I won't be back till Friday. But if Lean wants to do the recording, when I get back, I can still do the minutes.
Don't be looking at real estate now.
Go and visit family.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Thanks
you
for
will be
letting
here
us
on the
know.
12th.
I'm waiting for a motion.
Just that Monday.
I'll
through
make a
Friday,
motion that we adjourn the meeting at 9:19. You do? Well, get your cell phone.
No, it's in the truck.
Uh,
Wait, I'll go get
9:19
it.
again.
9:19.
9:19.
And who's seconding it?
I guess I'll second it, cause Mike's afraid to.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, I did my quota last week, my turn.